Hey everyone, Kirostyle here. Welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney. So, just as a reminder, the Great Ace Attorney is actually two games in Japan, the Great Ace Attorney 1 and the Great Ace Attorney 2. So when it was released here and localized, they combined them both together into the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. So yesterday we finished the last case of the first game, the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. So today we're starting the first case of the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. So the nice thing is, I think all the cases in the second game are better because they've already established the characters and the setting. So we get to go right into having some really cool mysteries and some really interesting plot arcs. There were a lot of loose plot ends at the end of the first game as well. So originally, the people in Japan, when the game came out, they had to wait 2 years to find out all the answers to their questions. So it's kind of nice that they released them both at the same time. I think it was smart of them because it's probably easier to translate both of them at the same time with the same team. And if they only released one game, I feel like everyone would get so curious and they would go look up spoilers and find out anyways. So I'm very excited to be diving into the second game here. Thank you so much for coming to the stream. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys are enjoying the game. And we'll get started with the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve Case 1. So at the end of beating the first game, it seems my background has changed too. It looks like it's the dock right when the ship left. And again, at the end of the first game, we've heard some interesting revelations from those secret government messages that left us with a lot of extra questions. So let's continue. Oh, the save data doesn't go between the two games, it just continues the last one. So let's go select adventure. And then we'll start the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve.
Standing here in the bright sunshine, looking out over the vast ocean. Those days in London seem like a dream, but I do miss my time in England's vast capital. You know, he's flourished into a truly wonderful lawyer. I've no doubt that at this very moment, he's fighting some noble cause in court. Forgive me for taking so long to come to visit you. My life has been such a whirlwind since I returned. And no one could have predicted what has happened. Just 2 months after arriving home. So I came here today to ask something of you. Tomorrow, I shall be standing in court. For the only time in my life. As a lawyer. So please, I ask for your guidance. Kazuma-sama.
Hey, welcome to the stream. Looks like things are off to an interesting start. Episode 1, The Adventure of the Blossoming Attorney. Here I am again after 9 months. Supreme Court of Judicature of Japan. I feel so nervous. I must steel my nerves and find a way to compose myself. Oh good, you're here. It doesn't do for a lawyer to be late. Oh, yes, good morning, sir. I hardly recognize you. You cut a fine figure, counsel. But you look as white as a sheet. And those wide eyes aren't doing you any favors either. Oh dear. The truth is, I'm so incredibly nervous. I feel utterly nauseated. I almost wish that I'd never been born. Goodness, not the sort of thing a father hopes to hear from his daughter, I must say. Yujin Mikotoba, professor of medicine at the Imperial Yume University, a man who, earlier in his life, traveled to Great Britain to study the latest advances in forensic medical science. And of course, my brilliant father. Excuse me. Would I be correct in thinking that you're to be my lawyer in court today? Yes. Yes, that's right. Miss? Well, I want to thank you for agreeing to represent me. I swear on my life. It's a complete fabrication, this whole thing. Rei Membami, born the same year as I, my greatest friend. So her name here, Rei Membami, is a pun. It's remember me. Rei Memba me. It's kind of silly though, her Japanese name was much cooler. Her Japanese name was Heiori Masamune. And although it didn't have the same pun, I think it sounds much more elegant. Because they call her Membami a lot throughout the trial because it's her last name. They call people by their surnames a lot. And Membami just doesn't have the same ring as Masamune, does it? Though unusual for a woman in our time, she works at the University Research Laboratory helping my father. And sadly, she's the defendant in today's trial. Accused of committing a truly awful murder. Are you feeling alright? Since we started talking, you seem, well, have become a little flushed. Oh my, it's just that, you look so gallant and dashing. Sorry? And when I fall under your intense gaze, it, well, makes me feel rather bashful. Goodness, I don't think she knows. She hasn't realized who I am. It would appear our little plan for this trial is going to work. Oh, what do you mean, Professor Mikotoba? If even your best friend can't see through the disguise, I think we can relax. Disguise? Yes, I've never tried dressing this way before, of course, so I wasn't sure how convincing it would be. But this does make me feel a little relieved, as you say, Father. Father? What? Is that you? Is that you, Susato? I'm so sorry I didn't say anything earlier sooner, Rei. It's just that— No! What are you doing? What's going on? What? That varsity uniform, that varsity cape, that varsity cap, that varsity badge. Look at you! You look for all the world just like a student of the Imperial Yume University. A male student. I'm so glad you think so. It means all my preparations have been worthwhile. I woke at 4 this morning to make a start. But I don't understand. Why are you dressed like that? Well, you see, it was the only way. The only way she would be permitted into the Supreme Court to take on your defense in this trial. My defense? Never before in my life have I felt so frustrated having been born into this body. Courts in Japan are barred to women. We're not even allowed to set foot inside the courtroom, despite the fact that the laws of the land apply to all people, male and female alike. But women are forbidden. Just for today, I'll be leaving my true self at the courtroom door, so that I can act as your lawyer. Oh, Susato, you'd go to such lengths for me? Of course. You're my greatest friend. I just worry that I shan't be the lawyer you deserve. Oh no, I have complete faith in you. Rei. It's so strange though. I mean, you're such an accomplished judicial assistant already. And yet, just because you're a woman, what a wretched reason. I mean, why shouldn't you be allowed in court? You're so gallant and dashing. Rei, please don't look at me like that, with those flushed cheeks and doting eyes. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just, You really do look so dashing. Yes! You mentioned that once or twice. You should be pleased. It means you look convincing as a man. I am pleased, I think. It certainly helped to bolster my confidence today. Ray, you've managed to put on a brave face all of this, but I can see through it. I've noticed how your shoulders are slumped, and how you're trembling ever so slightly. Sato, you believe in me, don't you? I didn't do it. I couldn't have, I mean, murder. Of course. You have nothing to worry about. Your conscience is perfectly clean. Isn't that right? Yes. Yes, it is. Perfectly clean. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind about your innocence, which is why I'll stand by you until the bitter end of this trial. So in the original script for this game, they actually wanted Susato to be defending her father to be the defendant, but then they decided to create this character to mirror the relationship that Kazuma had with Ryunosuke, like the friendship going on. So then she and Rei have a similar kind of bond as Kazuma and Ryunosuke, which is kind of neat. Whatever happens, I'll always be on your side, because that's what it means to be a defense lawyer. That means so much to me, Susato. Defendant, counsel, court is about to begin. Proceed to the courtroom at once. You should go in at once, Rei. If you're late, the judge won't hesitate to pronounce you guilty. Oh. Stand aside! I don't think I've ever seen her run so fast. Well, Susato, you're certainly surprised your father, going to such lengths to be admitted into the courtroom, with no prior experience of being a lawyer. There was simply no other way. That's all there is to it. But father, you haven't told her, have you? I mean, I'm right in assuming Rei doesn't know how it came to this. Yes, quite right. I've kept that information from her. It would only worry her if she found out that no other lawyer would agree to take her case. I didn't want to burden her with that. And is it true? The reason why every other lawyer is refusing to take the case? Is it really because of who the victim was? We should be making a move now too. As you know, law isn't my field, but I'll do what I can to support my student. Thank you, Father. I'm Susato Mikotoba, a judicial assistant. 8 months ago, I accompanied a student of law on a study trip to Great Britain. But 2 months ago, due to unforeseen circumstances, I found myself back in Japan. How many times have I wished that he were here, I wonder. Still, I have no choice now but to steel myself for the trial ahead. Wish me luck, Naruhodo-san. This court is now in session to hear the trial of Rei Membabi.
The prosecution is fully ready to proceed, Your Excellency.
Ah, Achi, I see you changed your hairstyle since we've cut it. Susato looking good. Defense counsel, are you ready? Yes, Your Excellency, we are ready. Ready. Ah, yes, counsel. According to your registration details, your name is, Ryutaro Naruhodo. Is that correct? Sorry. Oh yes, I had to come up with a suitable male name for you this little venture. So I'm afraid to say I simply put down the first name that sprung to mind. Well, counsel? Yes, that's right. That's me. Yes, I am Ryutaro, he who has vowed to uphold the pride of the great Naruhodo clan. Ah. It seems Ryotaro may need to consider how better to uphold his manly act first and not overdo it. Those wild, wide eyes aren't doing you any favors either. Just relax and listen. Naruhodo.
A fresh face in this courtroom, if I'm not mistaken. But the name Naruhodo, will that perchance be...
You may be thinking of Ryunosuke Naruhodo, currently in Britain as part of a study program. This is, his cousin. That's right. Ryotaro here has been studying in the provinces. Was called to the capital for this trial. I assure you, in matters of law, his knowledge rivals that of any Tokyo's preeminent lawyers. Any of them.
Tut-tut. What a pitiful situation. Having been rejected by every lawyer in the capital, the accused has had to call in a country boy. How dare you? Susato is every bit as gallant and dashing as any of your Tokyo attorneys. I won't have you making fun of her. Her? Oh,
Please be careful, Ray.
What an unrefined tomboy we have here. But I wonder, is your gallant and dashing lawyer up to the challenge of defending you? His wide, skittish eyes very much suggest that he is not.
I'm so nervous. Now that I'm standing in his shoes, I'm starting to understand what Naruhodo-san goes through. Like it or not, eyes are wont to flit. I like how she's copying Ryunosuke's animations too. The case to be heard on this day is a matter of great significance to our national interests. In fact, it would be reasonable to assume that the outcome of this trial may well affect the very future of our empire.
Just like the trial 9 months ago, and yet for proceedings of such importance, we have this unknown yokel by the dock. Dear me.
Perhaps this would be an appropriate moment for me to assess the defense, to determine whether he is sufficiently competent to practice in this courtroom. 9 months ago, when a certain other Naruhodo stood where you are standing now, the same judge tested him as well. And even though he was just a student at the time, not even of law, he passed the test with flying colors. For a trained and experienced judicial assistant like you, this will be easy. So, counsel, do you consent to answering some simple questions? Alright, it's time to prove myself. Yes, Your Excellency. Please do make them simple. Very well. To start with, you will state the name of the victim. That is simple. I couldn't forget if I tried. What's the matter? Now that I'm standing in his shoes, I'm starting to understand something else Naruhodo-san goes through. Like it or not, minds are want to blank. It's not surprising, really. It's your first time in this position and in that guise. Even a bright spark like you is bound to flicker and falter a little under the circumstances. Oh dear, this is a dismal failure. Don't fret. You only need to use the knowledge you've gained as a judicial assistant to overcome the problem. Of course, the court record. Yes, the answer will be amongst the key information about the case in the court record. That's right, just use R to open the court record. Then you need to flip to the people section with R. And don't take too long over it. His Excellency is watching you closely. Alright, check the court record with R. That's where the information I need will be. Giselle Brett, the victim in the case who was a former British exchange student. 9 months ago, she was found guilty of the murder of visiting Professor Dr. John Watson, or Wilson, not Watson. We can't use the copyright. I'm waiting, counsel. What is the name of the victim in this case?
Yes!
The name of the victim who lost her life in this case is Miss Giselle Brett. Giselle Brett. A name that will never be forgotten in the courtrooms of our country, I'm sure. Correct. And being a member of our empire's judiciary, you will be well aware of the significance of that name. So, let me pose another simple question. As you know, Miss Brett was a visiting student from the Empire of Great Britain. Why, then, is her name indelibly associated with her own empire's judicial history? Obviously, you won't have forgotten that case from 9 months ago. But if that's proving hard to recall the finer points, everything you need is included in the court record. Obviously, I still remember. That was the start of everything. Giselle Brett. Behind the woman's student persona was the face of Queen Victoria.
Yes!
9 months ago, a visiting professor of medicine at the Imperial Yume University was killed, and the culprit was Giselle Brett. Yes, she was a killer. At the time, our country had just signed a new treaty with the Empire of Great Britain, and it was in the midst of this delicate diplomatic situation that the incident occurred. An Englishman, Dr. John H. Wilson, was shot dead. I believe he was an associate of your— Oh! Who's talking now? I believe he was an associate of yours, Professor Mikotoba. Yes, I was indebted to the man. He'd been my mentor when I went to London to study forensic medicine. Indeed, it was I who invited him to Japan as a visiting professor at the university. Naturally, the murder of an Englishman on our soil was a matter the government wished to resolve rapidly. Indeed it was, which is why a secret trial was conducted here at the Supreme Court. A student of the Imperial Yume University was arrested on suspicion of murder. A second-year English language student by the name of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. With the help of his best friend, a student lawyer, the accused conducted his own defense and exposed the despicable crime committed by Miss Giselle Brett. Miss Brett eventually admitted to her crime. However, when questioned about the motive that drove her to take Mr. Wilson's life, she gave no satisfactory answer before the trial reached its conclusion.
Immediately after the trial, the British government brought its consular jurisdiction into play. We were unable to sentence Miss Brett according to our empire's laws. It was decided that she would be removed to Shanghai, China instead.
Why Shanghai? There's a British consular court there. Correct. I oversaw the negotiations personally. The date of her transfer to Shanghai was finally settled upon only last week. All that remained of our empire's obligations was to see the woman safely on board a steamship.
And yet, the very day before her departure, the Englishwoman was killed.
Only the day before. That will do. I'm satisfied the counsel for the defense is sufficiently capable of representing the defendant.
Oh.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Over the first hurdle. Now, a summary of the incident, if you please. Prosecutor Ouchi.
As is your wish, Your Excellency. The repugnant crime took place on the 11th August in broad daylight. On the outskirts of the imperial capital, under a bright blue sky at a secluded bathing spot by the sea. The incident occurred inside a small beach hut, erected for bathers to rest or change their clothes. The cause of death was a single stab wound to the posterior abdomen that pierced the victim's lung.
Is that swan okay? Last time we saw her, her swan was still very much alive.
An injury which proved fatal. There were two persons alone together in the beach hut at the time of the victim's death. Miss Brett, in her bathing attire, and the accused, Ray Membami. Accordingly, there can be no doubt of the accused's guilt, especially when we consider she had a powerful motive. The police arrived rapidly at the scene and promptly arrested the young lady.
Wow. That extraordinary description of events leaves me somewhat at loss for words, I must say. That's certainly true. The prosecution summary was full of words that raise an awful lot of questions. As a lawyer, I really ought to pick up the prosecution counsel on what he said about the powerful motive. You're clearly exaggerating. Powerful motive is a blatant overstatement.
Tut tut tut, is that the yokel boy using long words he doesn't fully understand?
I beg your pardon.
No matter. Let us put this to the accused, shall we? Mbami-san, you are a research assistant at the Imperial Yume University, I believe.
Yes, I am. I'm working with Professor Mikotoba in his laboratory at the moment. I can confirm that the defendant is an excellent assistant with a strong sense of responsibility.
Fascinating here. Now another question. Prior to your work with Professor Mikotoba, whose research were you assisting then?
Oh, I was studying under Dr. John H. Wilson. Dr. Wilson? The visiting English professor who was murdered by Miss Brett 9 months ago.
The accused had a deep-seated respect for her former mentor, Dr. Wilson. Is that not true?
Yes, Dr. Wilson was a wonderful man.
Interesting. Then tell the court what deep-seated feelings you had towards the Englishwoman who killed him.
Well, obviously I was filled with hatred for what she'd done. A powerful hatred. Oh no, Ray! Be careful what you're saying. Ah!
The motive was revenge. Plain and simple, Your Excellency.
Well, it was clearly a trap all along. How wicked of him to use Ray's undying respect for her former mentor against her like that. I must find out more details and something we can use to bolster our defense. As a lawyer, I really ought to pick up the prosecution counsel on what he said about being alone together. Mbami-san.
Yes, what is it,
Naruhodo-san. I'm really starting to wish we'd made my alias Ryutaro Susato. Please tell the court why exactly you were present at the bathing slot with the victim in the first place, and why you were alone with her.
Oh, well, no, that's not true.
It wasn't like that at all. There were other people present. A detective who was guarding Miss Brett for starters. I was just asked to accompany Miss Brett as a companion, that's all.
But let us be clear. At the moment of her death, you were alone together with the victim in the hut. You and no one else. The truth is, there is only one reason why this young woman accompanied Miss Brett on her bathing sojourn. It was the accused's last chance to take the victim's life. No. Because, as we know, the following day would see Miss Brett extradited to the British authorities in Shanghai. And the accused would never have an opportunity to dispatch her again.
Kindly refrain from conjecture, counsel. The prosecution counsel seems to enjoy using provocative tricks like that. For now, at least, we need to assemble more facts. Try not to let him goad you. Oh dear, this is really terrifying. Your father's right. We need more information. If I may, Prosecutor Ouchie.
What do you want, you fresh-faced young yokel student?
I wonder, could you explain, please? You mentioned a bathing spot.
Ha! My apologies. Clearly my modernity has confused the poor country bumpkin's simple mind. Bathing spots are the very latest trend in health practices from the West. We are told that bathing in the water of the ocean is curative, therapeutic, and excellent for the skins.
No, that's not what I meant. I was referring to the fact that Miss Brett had, to all intents and purposes, been found guilty of murder. Why would a known criminal have been relaxing by the sea?
For old time's sake, I believe.
Sorry.
Miss Brett was to depart for Shanghai the following day. Her final wish, as it were, was to enjoy a day on our country's wonderful coast. And the British Embassy put extreme pressure on our government to comply.
But on what grounds would we agree to such a request? Because, as usual, our government is unable to stand up to foreign powers. In matters of diplomacy, it seems we don't even have the courage to decline the whims of a known criminal.
Don't look at me, Professor. It was the government who granted permission, not I. In any case, it was decided that with a dedicated detective on duty, nothing could go wrong.
But in fact, a murder took place.
I said don't look at me! It was a young girl student who did it, not I.
No one has proved that yet. I wouldn't provoke the man if you don't need to. I believe we all have a clear picture of the incident now. Despite her guilt being determined 9 months ago, Miss Brett managed to avoid incarceration, instead continuing her research work at the university. Obviously, over that period, she and Ray would have encountered each other on a number of occasions. Seeing the murder of the mentor for which she had such great respect enjoying such undeserved liberty. Yes, even if it was only temporary until Miss Brett's extradition to Shanghai. You can hardly blame Ray for her feelings of anger and resentment. Poor Ray.
So, Your Excellency, if you'd be so kind as to peruse this exhibit, a photographic print that shows the scene of the crime immediately following the grim incident.
Yes, thank you, Counsel. A tragic image.
As you can clearly see, there's nowhere within the hut that anyone else could have hidden.
The court will accept this photographic print as evidence. As I understand it then, the victim and the defendant were alone inside the beach hut at the time. This is deeply troubling, I must say. The finger of guilt points firmly at the defendant.
Well, Your Excellency, naturally, the prosecution has much more to its case. We intend to prove the accused's appalling actions beyond all reasonable contention. To that end, I can confirm we have multiple witnesses to the crime and damning evidence.
Witnesses? But who?
One of whom, I might add, is a highly respected police detective. I assure you, the testimony of these witnesses will leave no room for doubt.
Very well then, Counsel. Bring forth your witnesses.
I, Takatsuchi Aochi, have been waiting for this moment.
Sorry?
Oh yes, I haven't forgotten that trial 9 months ago, here in this very courthouse, when that irreverent little student boy utterly humiliated me. Ryunosuke Naruhodo!
What? Yes.
This insult to the Aochi family name will never be forgotten.
You've become conceited with age, Counsel. But the old have to stand aside and make way for the new. It's time, or it's the way of the world. May you never forget that.
Ah! My hair! Strike the head of the samurai whose top knot has been cut, and the bell of cultural enlightenment tolls. Yes, on that fateful day, my former self died.
The start of your own mini Meiji revolution. Are you modernizing as well, Counsel?
Silence! Since I swore revenge back then, there has been a minor miracle atop my head. Observe the Aochi growth. You see, this little seed of hope sprouting forth from this barren expanse of my crown.
I think that tiny growth is trying to tell me something.
Oh, I'm afraid I can't really see. Well, where is the hope exactly? I said silence! Today, I face yet another Yonko student of the Naruhodo clan. Well, I will vanquish you. My victory will be fertilizer for the seed of hope atop my head. You have been warned. With that, the prosecution calls the witnesses to the stand.
It looks like the stakes are high on both sides in this trial. The prosecution and defense each have much to lose. A haircut is hardly comparable to Ray's life.
Witnesses, please state your names and occupations for the court.
Chief Inspector Satoru Hosonaga, Imperial Police Bureau. I'm in disguise, obviously, so I can go undetected. He's got a cute little turtle on his head this time. Aww. And he's got a towel on his arm now instead of the waiter's towel, I guess. And I am, well, the next big thing in books. An author renowned throughout the capital, in fact. Yes. Soon to be sold out, the satirical I Am Cat, a sensational success by Soseki Natsume. Oh my goodness. Struggling student from the provinces, please. You needn't be in awe of me. I needn't. It's only natural you feel nervous in my presence. But all of you, please relax. Call me Soseki even. Well, it seems like he's regained his confidence. Back in London, everyone shunned him and he was very reclusive, and then he's come back to Japan. Now he's a celebrity and a superstar. Again, remember Soseki is based on an actual real-life author, so he mentioned one of his famous books, I Am Cat, or Wagahai no Neko da Aru. Yes. What on earth is Soseki-san doing here? Tread carefully, Susato. That author fellow knows you from your time in London, doesn't he? If he exposes you for who you really are, this will be over before it's begun. Yes, of course, I know. I presume Soseki-san wouldn't have forgotten about me. I could certainly never forget him. Although he does seem to have changed somewhat in the 6 months or so that it's been since I last saw him. And as for Inspector Hosonaga, that amazing outfit is hard to believe. Do I have something on my face? Well, your glasses for one, although they don't seem to be helping you see. Thank goodness he hasn't recognized me either. I suppose this is disguise, is it? I thought that appearing here in the clothes I was wearing at the time would make for a more faithful testimony. It is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly. Well, I can appreciate why an Imperial Police Bureau detective might have been present. What a business did a writer such as yourself have being at the scene, Soseki-san? Well, you see, I had been asked that day to give a lecture on the morning of the incident in the Imperial Yume University's Grand Lecture Hall, no less. Yume University? After the lecture, I had a very pleasant conversation with a researcher from the medical science department. A professor over there, in fact. With Professor Mikotoba? Yes, that's right. It was arranged by one of the newspapers. They wanted some story or other about the 2 former students who study in Great Britain. Of course, being a renowned author, the press never leave me alone. To secretly spy, snapshots, scribble stories, and scupper my privacy. As you can see, the conversation was written up in this newspaper here. Read it at your leisure, my provincial struggling student friend. I have plenty of copies. Hey, welcome to the stream. Thanks for coming. Thank you very much. You practically threw that paper at me. Anyway, following my interview with the professor, the lady in question appeared and made a very unexpected announcement. I should like to go with everyone to see your country's coast. Those were her words. As I explained before, Miss Bratt was never taken into custody. She continued to work in my laboratory under strict surveillance, of course. In which utterance, the university immediately contacted the government to seek guidance. And the response was, permit Miss Bratt to go as long as a detective accompanies her. That detective, I am at liberty to divulge, was me, Chief Inspector Satoru Hosonaga. Thereby, the entire party departed cordially for the seaside, it seems. Yeah, it seems like Soseki has some paparazzi following him around now. It was extremely challenging to clear all other members of the public from the vicinity of the beach. But fortunately, I'm at peak physical fitness at the moment, so I was able to carry out my duty flawlessly. Are you sure you're okay, Hosonaga? Oh my, Inspector, you do have something on your face now. How unsightly. I do apologize. Does that mean you went to the beach too, Father? No. Fortunately, I have work to finish off. But unfortunately, of course, it meant that as my assistant, Ray was invited to take my place. Of course! Being a renowned author, I didn't like to decline the invitation. But if only I had! I'd have never seen that awful sight! Relentlessly racked by remorse and regret! Very well, I must ask you to present your formal testimony to the court. You will give an account of all that you witnessed on your impromptu excursion to the coast. Of course, Your Excellency. Relentlessly racked by remorse and regrets, I am. On the day of the incident, I was ordered on a special surveillance assignment in this disguise. I just managed to catch that crab when I suddenly heard a caterwaul from behind me. I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question. Yes! The young girl was astride the Englishwoman, dagger in hand as she stabbed wildly. I saw blood on the blade. It proved to me that she stabbed the victim multiple times. Indeed, it does appear from the testimony that both witnesses here present saw it. The very moment of this heinous crime. What?
Now, if you will recall, I promised evidence as well. What phrase did I use again? Ah, yes, that was it. Damning evidence.
What have you there, counsel? A so-called fountain pen, is it? Correct, Your Excellency. I found it at the scene whilst examining the body. It appears that in her dying moments, with her final ounce of strength, the victim clutched a piece of evidence that would positively identify her killer.
What? Your Excellency, if you would cast your eyes over the photographic print of the crime scene once more.
Ah, goodness me! Yes, the victim is clearly grasping something quite deliberately there in her hand. That's right, the fountain pen. And if you would kindly examine the pen, Your Excellency. Ah! The owner's initials have been engraved into the ebonite barrel. R.M. Ray Mbami. The initials of the defendant.
No!
This fountain pen will be admitted immediately as a critical evidence.
So, have I admitted anything? Decisive testimony and damning evidence. There's a bright blue sky outside the courthouse today. Perfect weather to ascribe guilt, I feel.
I don't understand. The prosecution of 9 months ago had none of this man's poise. Counsel for the defense, you may begin your cross-examination now. Naruhodo-san!
Naruhodo.
That means... Oh, yes, me! Is there another Naruhodo in my courtroom? Actually, there isn't even a single Naruhodo in your courtroom. Cousin Ryotaro, pull yourself together, please. Alright, I've seen this countless times as a judicial assistant. Find inconsistencies in the witnesses' testimonies to prove they're lying somehow. That's all there is to it. That's how a real lawyer would handle a cross-examination. So let's see what I can do. Yeah, so the first victim here is Giselle Brett from the first case of the last game. Fun fact, she is the second culprit in the entire Ace Attorney series to become a victim herself. The first one was actually from Ace Attorney Investigations 2, which is another Japanese-only game. One of the culprits ends up becoming a victim later in the game. However, she is also the very first character in any Ace Attorney game to die in a game that is not her debut game. Because she debuted in the Great Ace Attorney 1, and then she died in the Great Ace Attorney 2. Because as you know, every Ace Attorney game is usually self-contained. The stories are self-contained, so any characters that are introduced within that game either live to see the tale, or they die within their introduction game. Any character that survives usually makes it through to the next game if they actually appear at all, because of consistency and just not wanting to, develop them in one game and then kill them off in another. So because these two games were created with their plots intertwining, with all the loose ends from the first game evidently there left on purpose, they had the opportunity to make it so a character actually debuted in one game and died in another for the very first time in the series. Which breaks another trope.
Hold it!
In that jaunty disguise. Correct. Wait, no. I mean, it wasn't the first time I've worn the swimsuit for a dip in the ocean. It's tried and tested. Do what must be done to keep the Englishwoman under surveillance. Those were my orders that day. And this tried and tested outfit was the answer. Being able to blend flawlessly into a crowd is an important part of a detective's job. I submerged myself in the salty water, leaving only Mr. Turtle floating inconspicuously on the surface. Oh my god, that's so cute! He was hiding in the water with the turtle poking out. Mr. Turtle loves the water. There was no need for you to blend into the background on this assignment, really, was there? If that made you late arriving on the scene, I think perhaps you had your priorities wrong. Perhaps I shouldn't pursue this line of questioning any further at the moment.
Hold it!
Ah, you're describing the victim's scream, presumably, Soseki-san. In more literary terms, you might say it was a scream that could have pierced the heavens. Kia! Or the like. Of course, that's just a metaphor. We renowned authors are wont to describing things so. So Soseki-san wasn't at all like this in England. Anyway, I spun around at the noise, and the beach hut immediately fell under my gaze. Yes, the beach hut. The area is popular with government ministers. Many have seaside retreats there for rest and recuperation. Locals are prohibited from entering the area, so it's always very quiet. The beach hut is a simple structure, erected as a place for people to change or take refuge from the sun. Although, the Englishwoman commandeered the hut for herself, which meant that I was forced to change into my swimwear on the sand. Ah, I imagine that was rather embarrassing for you. Well, anyway, I tossed the crab aside and headed for the beach hut at a run. Or, in more literary terms, I just decrabbed and beetled off hut-wise. I ran into the beach hut at once, where I found the pair in question.
Hold it!
Wait, by pair, you don't mean to say... But how could that be? No, you misunderstand. Obviously, I mean the victim and the defendant, Rei Membami-san. Oh, it would have been helpful if you could have just said that from the outset. If you jump to conclusions, you have to expect to fall flat on your face sometimes.
Dear me, pinning your hopes on such an outside chance. Foolish, very foolish.
It really was an outside chance. I just wish I'd realized it before I said something silly.
So, Inspector, why don't you tell the court how exactly you found the aforementioned pair in the hut?
Well, it was a sorry sight, a really grisly scene. I parted the Norn curtain hanging in the doorway and stepped inside, only to see the defendant leaning menacingly over the lifeless body of the victim sprawled on the sand. Oh, the turtle's head like whips back and forth when he coughs. My glasses very nearly cracked at the ominous sight that met my eyes.
How thoroughly appalling.
He doesn't appear to be lying here. Well, Soseki-san, can you confirm what Inspector Hosonaga is saying, I wonder? Ah, you like a literary man's opinion.
Hold it!
Stabbed wildly, you actually saw her do it. Oh, indeed! This terrible specter, the terrapin inspector, the bloody torrent, the author's torment! Ugh! Every sight and every sound is still carved in my melancholy memory. That was my impression, at least, as a future literary sensation.
Counsel, what on earth was that shrill, effeminate scream?
Oh, no. What are you insinuating? I am a manly Japanese man as you. I wonder if I might interject here, Soseki-san. Something you said is troubling me. That was my impression, or your words just now, I believe. Ah, so you mean to say, you're not confident that you really did see what you're described? No! Yes! I know what I saw! My ears didn't deceive me when I heard that scream, hence my eyes didn't deceive me either. I could describe everything I saw vividly. I could publish it all in tomorrow's newspaper serial.
It sounds as though the next installment of I Am a Cat may take a macabre turn.
I think this is a fool's errand. The more we press your author friend on what he saw, the more entrenched she's going to become. Oh dear, how awkward.
Hold it!
She was stabbed multiple times. How could you be so sure of that? Very simply, from the blood on the blade. The blood. When I entered the hut, I saw the defendant holding the blade raised up in the air. Yes, that's right, I saw it too. Oh. And I noted that there was blood on the blade already at that point. In other words, the victim had already been stabbed at least once by the time I arrived on the scene. Yes, that's right, I saw it too. And the victim was already holding the defendant's fountain pen in her hand too. All of which means I can be sure the victim did not die instantly. Yes, right, saw it too. Maybe a year in London was too much for him. He sounds like he's forgotten how to speak Japanese. The logic of your argument is sound, at least. Well, as I said, it is my guiding principle to carry out all testimonies flawlessly. Perhaps it should be your guiding principle to protect the victim flawlessly. That's just my personal opinion, of course. Oh, come on. Ouch. Counsel, you will refrain from mocking the witness. Oh no, I just have so many thoughts whirling around in my head. It's all I can do to stand here, wide-eyed and mute. Goodness, my dear, you really must try to calm down. How am I supposed to find an inconsistency in what these two gentlemen are saying? I don't see why either of them would have any reason to lie. What you must remember, I think, is that witnesses may inadvertently lie at times, for various reasons: a misunderstanding, a mistaken observation, a delusion even. Ah, a delusion. What's important is we determine the truth. And there's only one way to do that. Yes, with evidence, of course. Spoken like a true judicial assistant. During witness testimony, you can use R to pick a piece of evidence to present for consideration. So you need to listen carefully to each statement and compare what's said to the details in the court record. If you find some conflicting information, that may be the inconsistency you're looking for. Yes, it's all about inconsistencies. Once you've identified a witness's statement that appears to conflict with a piece of evidence, present the evidence to the witness with X, and the way ahead will present itself to you, I'm sure. Yes, alright then. I'll consider the details of all evidence in the court record against each statement to find an inconsistency. I hope I'm up to the task. Don't forget that you can have the witnesses repeat their statements as many times as you like. Everyone has to start at the beginning, remember? So those wide eyes are quite forgivable. And besides, there's no one else to defend the poor girl. You're right, I need to listen to the testimony again from the start. Okay, let's have a look at our evidence again. Postmortem report. Time of death just after 2 p.m. Death is believed to be due to trauma to the victim's lung from a knife blade. Only a single wound was identified. Single deep stab wound from behind, piercing a lung and resulting in fatal hemorrhage. Death would have occurred within minutes. Extreme meiosis, pupil constriction was observed in the victim in both eyes. Okay, I think we can use that. Here's the photo. Look at that nice picture there. Oh, I can't examine anything yet. Okay.
Objection!
With that accusatory cry that has welled up from deep inside me, I think I finally understand. Every time Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san have stood here at the bench, the stakes have been very, very high indeed.
What's the meaning of that menacing pose, counsel?
I'd like the witness to clarify something for me. This is a nice rearrangement of Susato's theme. Who? What? Where? When? Who? How? Not you, Soseki-san. The query is directed at Inspector Hosonaga. At me. In your statement just now, you said that the victim was stabbed multiple times. Yes, that's right. As I said when I entered the hut, the defendant was already standing over the victim, bloody knife in hand like a murderous demon. And yet, that cannot be. What? Get to the point, please, counsel. Oh, she still has her little book, that's nice. In the post-mortem report, it clearly states the victim was stabbed one time only. Ah! Yeah. In other words, Inspector Hosanaga's testimony is clearly flawed. Ah, yeah, there we go. This is Ryutaro's objection theme, which is another rearrangement of Susato's theme combined with the objection theme. It's very nice, I like it. Ah! And Soseki-san. Me? You claim to have seen Membami-san in the throes of stabbing the victim. Yes! Yes, I did! Wildly! But both you and the inspector confirmed the same point. That there was already blood on the knife that you saw the defendant holding. Yes, and? It's quite simple. We know the murder weapon was used to stab the victim only once. Therefore, there's no way there could have been blood on the knife if that single stabbing hadn't already occurred. Ah, true! And what exactly is your contention, Counsel? Are you ever going to tell us? Yes, Your Excellency. There's only one logical conclusion. What Soseki-san in fact saw was not the moment the defendant stabbed the victim at all, but the moment that the defendant, in fact, withdrew the blade from the victim's body. That can't be! Excellent work, Susato. You exploded at them without objection, and then proceed to pull them apart systematically.
Objection! Well, this takes me back. Yes, I seem to remember your cousin staged a scene much like this in the trial 9 months ago. A half-witted child with a half-baked objection, attempting to steal the show.
You're right, there were certain similarities. Except that so-called half-witted child managed to outwit the prosecution, who was only half a head of hair.
Slander! My head is quite adequately dressed. In any case, all this talk of stabbing, withdrawing, and multiple wounds, it makes not a jot of difference.
What? Why not?
Engage your brain, young man. When the accused first plunged the deadly weapon into the victim, that was a fatal blow. And it was at that moment, just as she had withdrawn the blade ready for her next strike, that the witnesses saw. The knife was already tainted with blood because the accused had already stabbed the victim.
Ah!
All you have successfully shown with your little display is that the mustached author is prone to moments of extravagance.
Ah! I am in agreement with the prosecution. If the defendant was seen wielding the blade at all, that is sufficient grounds for her actions to be viewed with suspicion.
But if she was withdrawing the blade, then we are back to where we started.
Sorry?
Consider this, young yokel boy. If the student girl is innocent as you claim, then why would she have pulled the blade from the victim? And with a demon's cold-blooded composure too? The prosecution demands an explanation, and it better be good.
Why did Ray pull out the knife? Ah, yes. Going for the jugular.
What does father mean by that?
Let the counsel hear your answer then, counsel.
The truth is, I don't really know. I have to come up with a plausible reason here, or we don't have a case. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife blade out of the victim's body was surely so she could... According to the post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant.
That's correct. It's thought she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury.
Indeed, giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates her killer. The point is, being a medical research student, Membami-san was compelled to act when faced with the wounded victim. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life. Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect of this young yokel.
Indeed.
Is it just me, or does it suddenly feel much colder in here?
Your Excellency, if I may. Speak, witness.
I would like another opportunity to testify. In respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the yokel defense counsel, I mean. Slipshod? An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young yokel, hopeful, has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to the law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense.
Very well, Inspector, I will permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the defense counsel's assertion.
Yes, sir. I would do so flawlessly. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. It's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes, think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Oh, I see. This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from some obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. Anyone who's ever given anyone a little poke with a knife and pulled it out knows it. Oh, well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so...
Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit.
Father, is it true? Is what they're telling me?
Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways.
But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out that knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Brett?
I don't know.
Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... could my friend actually have...
Susato!
Yes.
Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination.
Oh, yes, Your Excellency.
However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I'll be moving on to my adjudication immediately afterwards.
I understand. Believing in your client and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but I have no idea it would be this hard.
Hold it!
You say doing it without thinking could be a problem. Does that mean that if you use due care and attention, it would be alright? I wouldn't have thought this needed spelling out, really. But the blade is like a stopper in the wound. Remove it, and a serious hemorrhage will occur. In other words, a medic would need to be present before any attempt was made to withdraw the blade. Doing it without thinking would be madness. You just can't do it. Oh! Well, thank you for such a thorough explanation. You see, Counsel? When you act without thinking, the result is a bloodbath. Ugh.
Back to the witness testimony, please.
Hold it!
In that case, there's an obvious explanation here.
Which is?
Clearly, the defendant, Ray Membami-san,
does not possess an ounce of sense. Oh great, that was wonderful. What do you think about that, Professor Mikotoba? I'm not sure that you should be labeling your best friend as lacking in common sense. Well, I thought it would be better than labeling her as a murderer.
I don't know, young people these days. That's friendship. I don't understand it.
Careful, Counsel. A lack of common sense can be a very dangerous thing.
Oh dear. That recoiled me rather badly.
That's life, I'm afraid. A lesson everyone must learn. Hopefully you can see now this is really basic medical knowledge. Being involved in medical research, Membami-san would certainly have been aware of it.
Hold it!
But the defendant has suddenly encountered somebody she knew lying on the ground, bleeding to death. The sight could have shocked her delicate sensibilities, causing her to remove the blade inadvertently. I really don't think inadvertent actions can explain this. The woman is a medical research assistant. I can't imagine she would behave so irrationally. Oh, but irrational behavior is a woman's prerogative, isn't it? Oh dear, you have a lot to learn about women. Only a small-minded man could have such bigoted views. Oh dear, perhaps I'm letting my male persona take hold a little too much. Well, have I managed to convey the basics now? That should cover the medical side of the argument.
Hold it!
Whatever the motive, it just isn't in Membami-san's nature to do something so awful. But she has both motive and opportunity. That's very hard to argue against. But you don't know the defendant.
Objection!
And you, Counsel, do you not appear to know the law?
Yes, evidence is the only way to convince the court of your argument. No, not feelings.
With this, fledgling to defend her, I would almost say I pity the accused.
So do I. Inspector, you will reiterate your point about the defendant's motive, please?
Ah, yes. Miss Brett was in many ways the sworn enemy of Membami-san.
The victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor.
Hold it!
Well, yes, that's true. Dr. Wilson recognized Membami-san's talent and offered her the position of assistant, despite her being a woman. She was extremely grateful to him. Yes, the Englishman appears to have been a very broad-minded individual. Dr. Wilson had no time for outdated traditions. He met with opposition, of course, but he believed firmly in Membami-san's abilities. Clearly, the defendant was in the man's debt, which only serves to prove my point. This is hopeless. I can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it. Suzato, it's at times like this. These when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals. The fundamentals? Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it? Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times already. I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You needn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail, too. Ah, I realize this is your first time playing the role of lawyer in the courtroom. So if you need reminding of the rudiments, you need only ask. I'll do my very best to help. Examine the evidence in the court record. It's an idea, certainly. What should I do? I don't need a refresher, I know what to do. Come to think of it, Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san were always turning evidence over and over in their hands. Yes, I need to examine things in greater detail with A. Ah, by the looks of your eyes, I see it's coming back to you. Go through the court record again and have a thorough look at everything. You may just find a clue. Yes, I'll do it straight away. If we take off the pen's lid, now let's unscrew the barrel, shall we? This must be the little reservoir that holds the ink. Yes, you fill it by drawing ink from the bottle up through the nib. Is something wrong, Father? Just that there doesn't actually appear to be any ink in there, that's all. Oh yes, you're right. It's pretty much empty. Well, it could be on the verge of running out, I suppose. Hey! Welcome to the stream, thanks for coming. The RM initials are very clearly engraved here. And the fact that Miss Brett was clinging to this pen in her dying moments is very clearly a message too. To identify her killer, you mean? I don't think there could be any doubt that this is a key piece of evidence in this case. Raucous England, returnees tell all. This is the interview with you and Soseki-san, is it, Father? It looks as though it was quite an exchange. Yes, he became a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment his hand karate chopped me in the neck. I do hope you weren't hurt. This is a newspaper from Soseki-san. There seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Exclusive, deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. From Yume's Medical Research. Father, isn't that your lab? What the? Let me see that. The poison's been stolen. It's this morning's paper that Soseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know? As embarrassing as this for the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard such a thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned his information? Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there? It's highly toxic poison we've been working with in the strictest confidence. I'd put Ray in charge of the project. Ray? She was managing it. If what's written here is true, it means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow. I don't believe it. We need to read this article very carefully. I think I know what I'm going for, obviously, because I know how this goes. I'm just unsure of exactly which piece I need to press on which statement. So basically, I have to say there's no good reason why she would pull the knife on the victim, but there is a good reason because it could have something to do with poison. But I'm not sure if I present this?
Objection!
Oh, there we go. No, there's one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What? The yokel not only has a poor grasp of the law, but also is a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified? It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at Imperial Yume University.
Objection!
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case. But... Prosecutor Auchi, you will let the defense speak. But a newspaper article, the court cannot rely on this kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry. Counsel for the defense. I'm going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion. Your Excellency. Yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says... Well, it's stolen from the laboratory, right? Deadly in tiny quantities? No. Poison was apparently stolen from a medical research laboratory at Yume University. Yes, it would seem so. Calling the department's security practices into question. The very department of the professor is standing so nonchalantly opposite me, I believe. Ryotaro. Oh, yes, Father. Was there some reason you felt it necessary to highlight the fact that the theft occurred in my department? How can I explain it? It's the first detail I cast my eye over, I suppose. I suggest you read the article again, carefully. I'm so sorry, oh dear. Okay, fine, it's the small doses. Father's fuming. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says... The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death in minutes. Are you suggesting? If the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Minbami-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible. Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What?
Objection! This is complete and utter nonsense.
Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny that possibility.
Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhage. The word poison appears nowhere in the document.
Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Objection! Oh please, this is clearly desperation. The weasel's last breaking of wind. Poison has nothing to do whatsoever with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is at all reliable anyway.
In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, he claims she suspected poisoning and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense.
Exactly. Well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, yokel?
Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. What?
You can't possibly...
From your expression, counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware. The words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence.
Yes, Your Excellency. I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times, from my place at his side in the Old Bailey.
In that case, counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? Oh, I didn't realize they separated the newspaper article into two separate things. Following a lecture at the Unime by Soseki Natsume on 11th August, it's come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, would prove fatal in minutes. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, starting with impaired breathing and ending with an acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. Such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It's apparently an entire new synthesis of alkaloids, a rumored to have been commissioned by the military. So it must have been the symptoms.
Take that!
How exactly would you explain this piece of evidence's connection to the newspaper article?
In truth, I'm not really sure.
What do you mean? I know. But my father always taught me to ask my elders whenever I was in trouble. So I thought I should ask your opinion, Your Excellency. If it is advice you seek, counsel, then I suggest that before indiscriminately thrusting evidence under my nose. Okay, fine, it must be the autopsy report then. Why not thrust it under the nose of the professor at your side?
I think he means you.
Good grief, thrusting that under my nose isn't going to solve anything here. We must use our heads. The article in the paper had details of the toxin. Now, where have we seen similar details? Does nowhere come to mind?
Ah, you mean I ought to search through all the evidence looking for that?
If I'm not mistaken, it appears the advice of your elders has given you an idea.
Yes, I'd like another chance to present evidence if I may, Your Excellency.
In that case, counsel, you will present proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article?
Take that! I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, "Extreme meiosis pupil constriction was observed in the victim." Ah. Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death. Well... Under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was an extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, yes. What are you doing, you yokel detective? In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. What? The defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes had constricted severely. Yes, as a medical research student, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt. The funny thing here is we've never actually seen Miss Brett's eyes. They've always been hidden. Prosecutor Ouchie. I think you'll agree, this is very compelling evidence. We could have also just asked Ray. If we asked her, we would have not needed to do both of these cross-examinations. You, yokel student and yokel professor?
I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions.
No.
Yujin Mikotoba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please. Pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know. You don't know? The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court the reports of theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say.
Listen to the bumbling academic. Unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper.
I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision.
Father. A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students, rather than allowing them off on a killing sprees.
That's totally unfounded.
None of this is Professor Mikotoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray.
Membami-san, you stand accused here. Outbursts like that will not be tolerated.
But it was me. I was the one who noticed the poison we were developing had been stolen that day.
What?
So you knew. I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was.
Why didn't you let me know immediately?
I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential, but some of the poison had somehow been taken. So I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was.
The thief?
You don't mean... Yes, of course. It was that dainty Englishwoman.
Miss Giselle Brett.
That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on the stool in the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me, as if she knew she was untouchable.
I knew it was you.
I knew it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me, and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment or later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes they shrunk to tiny pinpoints.
I don't believe it. In other words, you realized the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison.
My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips while I had been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body. On the blade of the knife in her back.
And that train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade.
Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. That's why I hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time.
Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you have confessed in the end.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think the balance has shifted a little here in this courtroom now.
Objection!
Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Minbami-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brett came to be stabbed. Well, you have no answer because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge.
Objection!
But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you? Oh, I have evidence, and it's very much conclusive. What's the prosecution and counsel up to? It was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm almost sure of it.
You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Archie.
Perhaps some praise is due, young yokel student. What? If I had imagined, there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. But you've brought this on yourself.
What the? This is the only picture in the entire game we ever get the chance to see Giselle Brett's eyes, or at least the closest thing we can to be seeing her eyes, I suppose.
Could a more damning shot exist? Could a damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on that beach is almost palpable. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the cursed murderous nature, or shows the precise moment that Minbami-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back. No, that's not true. No. I don't believe it. Ah!
Order! 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 Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom?
Perhaps his voice is yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature. I'll show you who's slow to mature.
Careful now, Suzato is starting to show her face here. It is often said that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print as evidence.
I can't believe he's had a photograph like that up his sleeve the entire time. Such a stark image, I'm genuinely lost for words. Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... who took that photograph? Ray.
Objection!
That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention. Oh.
Objection!
That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony.
I will uphold the defense's demand. The prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once.
Well, I'm afraid I can't do that. Pardon? You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday. There was nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of this print is unknown.
Goodness!
Are we to understand then, Counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact that this photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believed it fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court?
When you first produced that print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment, because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you?
Silence, you yokel student and blabbering professor! What matters is the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses. But the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly, this isn't the moment that the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings.
Indeed, without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim. And the scene it captures is, without doubt, the most compelling evidence presented to the court. Photoshop hasn't been invented yet, or computers. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear.
Oh no!
Suzato, this is the time for you to fight. If what you've established so far is true, there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Ray withdrew the blade from the victim. Yes, we just need to prove that somehow.
You'll have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces. And to rue the day you came up against Takatsuchi Ouchi in a court of law.
If I can't determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere. There must be some way of working out who took it. Well, Counsel. Your Excellency, the burning question is who took that photograph, and the truth is... Let's have a look at our evidence. Well... Can't turn it over or anything. Well, let's just say I have the answer. I know who it is, but I'm just not sure if they're going to ask me for the evidence. This isn't about whether I can or can't come up with the answer now. I simply have to. The identity of the person who took this dramatic photographic print is, I assure you, something the defense can and will reveal.
What? No, you can't possibly. But as you so boldly claim that you can, please, do enlighten us.
Unfortunately, I'm unable to present a name. Ah yeah, see, there we go.
How utterly underwhelming. Do you really believe you could...
However, I am able to present evidence. The defense has a piece of evidence that reveals important details of the photographer's identity.
What?
Very well then, Counsel. Present your proof to the court. Which piece of evidence do you claim reveals something about the identity of the mystery photographer? Because there's supposed to be like a... I'm pretty sure it's a newspaper. Oops. But I just... Do I need to examine it first, or can I just present it?
Take that!
What is that? The newspaper again? Raucous England returnees tell all. It's not the headline that's relevant here, Your Excellency. It's the photograph. If you look at it closely, you'll notice that there are some white lines on the right-hand side. Ah, yes, indeed. They had already caught my eye as it happens.
Huh, what of it? A shadow of some kind, presumably, from the branches of a tree or the like.
There are no trees growing inside my laboratory at the university, I can assure you. Now, if you look closely at this photograph... Good gracious! Yes, exactly the same pattern of lines is present on this photograph too.
Objection!
Well, that tells us nothing. Huh, yes, it's a shadow of some kind, definitely, from the branches of a tree.
There wouldn't be any trees growing inside a hut at the beach, Council.
Huh.
What's quite remarkable about it is that the two patterns are absolutely identical. How could such an extraordinary similarity have transpired? The curious matching pattern that appears on both photographic prints is a result of... Obviously, it must be due to a problem with the camera used to take the photographs.
With the photographic device?
Yes, we can confidently say the camera's lens must be scratched. And that the scratched lens causes unwanted lines to appear on every print taken with the device. In short, the two photographs under consideration here were taken with the same camera.
But... There must be hundreds of such camera devices here in the capital. It will be utterly impossible to identify the owner of this particular one.
Objection!
I think you're forgetting, Prosecutor Ouchi, that one of the photographs featured in a newspaper article. A newspaper? Ah! That's right. The author of the article is a mystery witness to the crime. What? What? Many memo! I see why you were called a raucous English returnee. What are you yelling about? You've already testified. It's many memo, I tell you! Many memo! Mo! So Zeki-san, what was that? Did you say many memo? Never since I returned to Japan. A reporter from the Shoyu News has been hounding me, following my every move. A reporter by the name of Wrightin Many Memo. Yes, hounding me from dawn till dusk. So the pun here is writing many memos. Writing many memo. It's actually very similar to his Japanese name. His Japanese name is Heita Mamemomi. And as you can see, a lot of times during this trial, they have a fun time saying his name with a lot of alliterations that start with M. Mamemomi, many memo. Ah, now that he mentions it. They secretly spy, snapshots, scribble stories, and scupper my privacy. Could that same reporter be? I like how that reporter has just been in the background this whole time in the court. No one's really said anything about it, or no one's really noticed it or pointed it out or said, he doesn't belong here in the courtroom. He's just allowed to be here, apparently. There's only been a couple characters that have been introduced like this, where they're kind of background characters, and then suddenly they get attention. Sheena from Ace Attorney Investigations 1 is one of them, and the second one is Nana from Spirit of Justice. Were introduced like this, where they're just kind of in the background of another character, until someone eventually pointed them out. A camera to the left of him, a notebook to the right. There I am, stuck in the middle with Wrightin Many Memo. You're saying this picture was taken by Many Memo. Yes, my lord, your excellency, Esquire. Officer, find this newspaper reporter at once and bring him to my courtroom. We will adjourn for a short recess in the meantime. Oh, yes, your excellency. As you say, your excellency. And one more thing. I want this knife, the murder weapon, examined for traces of poison. You will solicit the assistance of the Imperial University's medical department for the task. Understood. Yeah. I don't think has he been added to my court record yet? He's not there yet. He will be, though. Any memo! Wait. No, I want to save in this slot. Okay, let's take a little short breather. 5 minutes, we'll be back and we'll continue the second half of this trial. This tutorial case is shorter than the tutorial case from the first game. The tutorial case of Great Ace Attorney 1 is the longest tutorial in all of Ace Attorney, but this one is more of a regular Ace Attorney tutorial case length. Okay, 5 minutes and we'll be right back. Thanks for coming to the stream. Hope you're enjoying the game.
Hey everyone, and we're back. Let's continue with the second half of this trial. I'm so sorry, Susato. I should have told you about the toxin. Ray. You have a strong sense of responsibility, I know. That's why you decide to shoulder the burden alone. No, that's not it at all. I was scared of my failure coming to light, that's all. So I hoped to retrieve the substance from the Englishwoman before anyone found out. Before the trial started, you remember what you said, Susato. You had no doubt in your mind about my innocence, that you'd stand by me to the last. I remember. And yet I didn't deserve your trust in me. I hid important details from you, Susato. I completely betrayed your faith in me. Hit me, Susato! I deserve it! No, in fact, throw me to the floor! No, that's too good for me as well! Drag me through the city streets! I'm no better, you know. Oh! Even though in my heart, I knew you'd pull the knife blade from Miss Brett's back. There was just a brief moment when, in my mind, I doubted you. Susato! I'm sorry. After I stood here and promised you that I'd stand by you and always be on your side, I betrayed your faith in me too. And as such, I failed you as a lawyer. Oh, no. I think this situation has taught both of you a valuable lesson. Placing your unbridled faith in another is no easy task. Yes, Father. That fact has certainly struck home. Which is why I can see more clearly now. So, Ray. Yes? Can you find it in your heart to forgive me? Oh, Susato. You know, you'll always be a gallant and dashing lawyer in my eyes now. Oh, Ray. I was so scared, you know. When it happened, I didn't know what was going on. The Englishwoman was sitting at the back of the hut, listening to what I was saying. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then a moment later, she suddenly got to her feet. Before collapsing on the floor in front of me, with a knife in her back. Okay, I still want to know what happened to the swan, though. Is the swan okay? It all happened right before my eyes. And you were the only people in the hut at the time. That's right, just Miss Brett and myself. There was no one else. So I just don't understand how she could possibly have been stabbed like that. A great mystery indeed. I still can't believe it happened. That's why I just couldn't bring myself to speak up. It'll be alright. However it happened, whatever reason went on by the sea that day, or whatever really went on by the sea that day, I promise you, I'm going to prove everything you said you saw is true. Spoken like a true Mikotoba. Now, I think we should discuss what's coming up in the trial, don't you? We don't have much time. We must make sure we have our facts in order. Yes, I expect the poison is going to come under close scrutiny in the upcoming proceedings. The police should hopefully have identified it on the blade by now. The trouble is, it's a completely new laboratory synthesized blend of alkaloids. The police won't have any way of testing for it. Oh, I see. Yes, without this chemical reagent, it's impossible to detect the toxin. Chemical reagent. I sent a colleague of mine off with some earlier to deliver to police headquarters. I think perhaps you should have some as well, though, just in case. What's the matter, Susato? You're suddenly very quiet. This is a newspaper article. Exclusive deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. I'm wondering how the information got out, given it was a government secret. It was all the Englishwoman's doing. What? It was when the professor and Soseki-san were being interviewed at the laboratory. The so-called English lady swaned in, without any compunction, said to Professor Mikotoba, "Oh, Professor, surely your guests would love to hear about your work on that substance there." It put me in a very awkward position, to be frank. But Soseki-san's curiosity had been piqued, so I had little choice but to give him a cursory introduction. So then, Soseki-san knew about the poison. Yes, and it's highly likely that the reporter who was writing up the story about us would have caught a glimpse of the toxin too. This Many Memo-san. By the way, did that reporter join you all when you went to the beach? Oh, no. I don't remember the reporter being there. Indeed, he shouldn't have been. I very much doubt anyone would have wanted him there. Oh? A known criminal had been given permission by the authorities to bathe by the seaside. Soseki-san pointed out that inviting a reporter might be problematic, so the man was sent back to his office. Yet he obviously didn't go back. He secretly followed the party to the beach and took this very candid photograph. And then presumably he posted it anonymously to the police. Ah! Yes, that must be what happened. Counsel! We've just heard that the new witness is now ready to testify. The trial is about to resume. Please proceed into the courtroom at once. It's time to steel ourselves once again, then. Defense Attorney Ryotaro Naruhodo. Yes. Rei has put her faith in me now, and told me everything. So I can't let her down. I have to prove that what she's telling the court is true. I have to prove what really happened that day. I hereby call this court to order as we reconvene to continue the trial of Rei Rembami. Prosecutor Aochi, have you summoned the new witness?
Before I address that question, Your Excellency, I have some very important news to share.
Oh? What news? And why does he look so happy about it?
During the recess, with the collaboration of Professor Mikotoba's laboratory at Yume University, the police re-examined the knife that was used to end Miss Giselle Brett's life.
Excellent. I admire your rapid handling of the matter.
Oh, too kind, Your Excellency, too kind. I was merely carrying out your instructions, of course.
I had the reagent delivered to police headquarters by rickshaw, so it would be there in good time.
But judging by the man's swagger, I fear we might need to...
By judging by the man's swagger, I feel we might need to brace ourselves for the inevitable. And counsel, what were the results?
This dagger, which was so cruelly used to end the life of the victim, has no trace of poison anywhere on its blade.
What? Are you sure about that?
I would stake the reputation of the police on it.
Armed with the reagent, the test is extremely simple. They couldn't have made a mistake.
In short, the accused's feeble excuse earlier has been utterly destroyed.
Ah!
Now, the prosecution is ready to call the new witness.
Ah, the newspaper reporter who managed to capture a photograph of the crucial moment. Good. Very well, officer. Bring in the witness. No trace of poison on the knife. But if that's really the case, how could the toxin have entered the victim's body?
Witness, please state your name and occupation for the court.
Write in many memo. Oh, his name's so hard to say. Write in many memo of the Shoryu news. I'm what people like to call a journal. What's a journal, Father? Do you know? Simply a contraction of journalist. I'm there when the news breaks, putting pen to paper to catch these scoops so they're in print the next morning. They don't call me the hero of the herald for nothing. The nice guy of news. Oh, so it was you who took this photograph, was it? Well, well, what have we here? I'm sorry? Oh, brace yourselves, people! Many Memo senses a scoop in the offing. Female student up to foul play, defended by curiously handsome young lawyer in Supreme Court. The readers will lap this up. We'll set it above the fold at 72 point in a 5-leg format for the morning edition. Huh? Right then, let's start with your name. Oh, it's Ryutaro Naruhodo. Next, what made you want to become a lawyer? Well, I wanted to reform our country's legal system, I suppose. Ryutaro has suddenly become very ambitious, I see. I just borrowed Kazuma-sama's dream for a while. By the way, my name is Taketsuchi Aochi. It's Taketsuchi Aochi. The so-called dark horse of the Supreme Court. My objections strike fear into every defense lawyer's heart. No, the readers won't buy that. What? Witness. Yes. What this court demands to know is whether or not you were responsible for the taking of this picture. It was delivered anonymously to the Imperial Police Bureau only yesterday. Yeah, I wouldn't be a journal if I didn't click-clack with when presented with a scoop like that now, would I? Sometimes stories call out to me, sometimes I have to chase them down, but either way, you've got to be fast. Fast legs to run with and a fast hand to write with. It's no good if you don't jot down, I always say. That's what I call my many memoism. Many memoism? Oh yes, I remember your face. We met that day when you were interviewing myself and Soseki-san. Yes, right. That was me, Many Memo again. But you were supposed to be going back to the Shoyu news offices after our meeting. But the scoop is, I didn't. Because that Englishwoman's words had piqued my journalistic interest. Miss Brett's words. A criminal left to do as she pleases, just because she happens to be a British citizen? It's horse dung! This country's judiciary is rotten to the core! The Supreme Court's rulings aren't worth the paper they're written on. The police are just imperial pawns. Say your tongue, young man. These are complex political issues at play. Well, anyway, I quickly jotted down those words she said in my many memo pad. Are you ready? I'll read it out loud. It's all here. Right, here goes. I should like to go with everyone to see your country's coast. A serious criminal going on some junket. The people need to know about this. That's why I decided to sneak after them. To get the woman's story so I could hammer her in the press. Do you mean to say that you did indeed witness it firsthand? The grim scene portrayed in this photograph. Oh yes, I saw it with my very own journal eyes. From start to finish, through the viewfinder of my trusty camera. Thank you, Many Memo-san. You will now give formal testimony before the court. You will state exactly what it is that you witnessed of the events surrounding Miss Brett's death. The beach hut was made of shoddy old reed screens, so there were plenty of gaps I could see inside through. The Englishwoman was sitting on a stool when the student girl came in and started arguing with her. Seconds later, the girl pulled out a knife. Throwing the Englishwoman to the floor, she stabbed her in the back. My smoldering journal spirit burst into flames. Quick as a flash, I whipped out my camera, ready to click. I pulled apart the rough weave of one of the screens and poked the lens through for the perfect shot. Read screens, you say? Right! You can see them clearly enough in that great shot I snapped. The hut walls were just screens made of coarsely woven reeds. Yes, it appears it allows the breeze to pass through and bring some relief from the summer heat. And it was a breeze for me to poke my camera through and see the whole thing hotting up. Ignoring for the time being the appalling invasion of privacy involved, did you witness everything that happened from the moment the defendant entered the hut? Oh yes, I saw it. I saw the whole thing from start to finish. And you say you took the photograph through the gap in one of the screens. Luckily for me, they were pretty shoddily woven. I pulled the reeds apart and thrust the lens of my camera through the gap. Would I get away with it, or would I be seen? It was the gamble of a lifetime.
A tenacity of purpose that's considered admirable in a journalist, I suppose.
Run a risk one day, run a scoop the next. That's many memoism in a nutshell. At last, it would appear we have a genuine witness to this wicked crime. The evidence and the testimony are extremely compelling. I believe we may be close to our verdict.
No. Wonderful news, Your Excellency. Wonderful.
Nevertheless, it cannot be denied that this testimony begs one very large question.
What question?
Exclusive news, a startling photograph, all the makings of an exceptional story for the reporter. Why, then, was the story never published?
Oh, that's right.
Seems clear to me that there are circumstances at play here they have yet to be understood.
More pathetic excuses.
Very well then, counsel. Proceed with your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Excellency.
There's more to this reporter than meets the eye.
He's keeping something about the case very close to his chest.
Hold it!
What made you want to see what was happening inside the beach hut in the first place?
Call it journo instinct. Can you think of a better reason?
Oh, I don't know. Perhaps because, as well as being a proven criminal, the person inside was a young woman.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. Brace yourselves, people. He's painting the journal as a voyeur.
It's hardly slander, sir. You had a camera, and you were taking pictures without the woman's knowledge.
Nope, you've got it all wrong, little student boy.
Sorry?
To my mind, all that was inside that hut was a scoop. Nothing more, nothing less. Scoops know no gender, man or woman, it's all news. That's not even many memoism, it's basic journalism.
Oh, thanks for coming to the stream. Take care. If only the courtroom was as indiscriminate.
Right, so if it's all buttoned up, can we move on?
Yeah, if you need to sleep, go sleep and get some good rest. Thanks for coming.
Tell the court that, then, witness. What sight befell your eyes when you looked inside the hut? A sight that vindicated my journo instinct, that's what. When I pulled back the reeds, I could see it all as clear as day. The Englishwoman was sitting on a stool when the student girl came in and started arguing with her.
Hold it!
So you actually saw Minbami-san entering the hut?
Yep, and she was raging like my journal spirit.
In the argument you mentioned, what was that about exactly?
You stole it, I didn't steal it, that kind of thing.
Talking about the poison, I suppose.
The student girl walked right up to the Englishwoman and really started laying into her. I mean, if she'd laid into her anymore, there would have been eggs. The man should have been an author. His descriptive talents are wasted on journalism. But the student's rantings fell on deaf ears, like a Japanese person listening to English for the first time.
You really ought to work on his similes first, though, to be honest.
Anyway, the point is, that woman in the dock was mightily angry.
And her temper finally got the better of her, it seems. Dear me.
which was the climactic moment that I caught on film.
Hold it!
Do you swear before the court that you actually saw the precise moment when the stabbing took place? Ha! The precise moment I didn't see just that. I saw the whole hellish scene play out, right from start to finish.
I have here a simple plan of the peach hut. Perhaps you could use it to explain to the court exactly what you witnessed.
Right you are, it's all here in my memo pad. When I first peered into the hut, I'm sure the Englishwoman was on this stool at the back of the hut here.
Yes, the accused's own testimony confirmed that.
She just sat at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly, is what I had noted down. It's my turn to testify now, try not to interrupt. Ugh. Then, the next moment, as I was watching, the evil student girl entered the hut. After a while, the pair of them ended up in the middle of the hut, arguing furiously. The Englishwoman went for the student, but the girl dodged out of the way. And in a flash, plunged the knife into her adversary's back as the two passed each other. What you describe as a grim crime indeed. Never sugarcoat the truth. That's what many memoism says.
By the way, Many Memo-san, whilst you were watching that terrible scene unfold before your eyes through the gap in the screen, did it not occur to you to try to prevent the tragedy, rather than catch it on film?
Journals have to be observers. We can't get involved. That's our raison d'etre.
So you didn't converse with Miss Brett at all?
Obviously not. An observer always remains on the outside looking in.
And that's something to be proud of, is it?
Your Excellency, if I may? Yes, Professor. I think the witness's last expertly phrased statement should perhaps be added to his formal testimony.
Father, what are you...
I will grant the defense's request. Many Memo-san, you will supplement your formal testimony with the aforementioned statement. Well, nihilism is the foundation of many memoism. Well, I'll gladly prove that my words aren't meaningless. I never once set foot in the hut, nor spoke with the Englishman. I was there only as an observer.
Hold it!
Really? You didn't set foot inside the hut at all? Are you quite sure about that?
I think you may have the wrong impression of me. We're talking about a murder scene here. My nerves were stretched to breaking point already.
Oh, I see. You were scared. Maybe I did have the wrong impression of you, yes.
It was all I could do to stifle a scream and hold my hand steady enough to snap a shot.
You really should have summoned help before thinking of your camera.
Many memoism and humanism don't always agree. And most of the time in those instances, many memoism comes out on top.
Huh.
As a sculptor of stories, sometimes I have to be cruel for my art. Yes, that's spot on.
Surely he's making all this up. He claims to have spied the whole affair from start to finish. If true, his testimony is devastating. But it does seem as though he's holding something back, doesn't it? If that's how you feel, I suggest you trust your instincts and press him on everything he said. As you've no doubt seen done many times before in your role as judicial assistant. Yes, I have. I've seen witnesses like this pressed often. I know exactly what to do. Okay, so since this statement was added last, yeah, he definitely met with her. Now, the pen has his initials, because he and Ray actually have the same initials. That was actually really important for them when they localized the game, to make sure that they stayed consistent with that. However, I'm not sure if it's the right time to bring that up. I know it will come up later, I'm just not sure if it comes up now. She's got the pen in her hand.
We have the article, that's not important anymore. Yeah, I think I'll present the pen now. It has to be for now.
Objection!
Oh, no, never mind. The witness's statement is definitely contradicted by this piece of evidence. Is that so, counsel? Then perhaps you would care to explain to the court precisely how. How? Well, definitely. The contradiction lies in your apparent eagerness to present an empty argument, I feel. Perhaps I need to reconsider. I don't think now's the time to present the photo. I think. I need to prove that he went into the hut. There's some sort of emblem here, look. But it isn't a Yume University one. Oh, maybe it's because I didn't examine this. Maybe that's why. It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind. That would seem to imply the pen doesn't, in fact, belong to Ray. Okay, there we go. Now, because he's wearing the emblem on his armband. Okay, there we go, there we go. And Yumemo-san, until now, I've had a firm belief that newspapers are in the business of uncovering and publishing the truth. You're spot on there. The press doesn't lie, which is why I'm proud to wear the emblem of the Shoyun News on my arm. In a way, that's more many-memoism. Sadly, though, it seems the journalists who write for those papers don't always share the same passion for the truth. What are you suggesting with those recriminatory words, counsel? Many Memo-san, do you recognize this fountain pen? Ugh! This pen was found at the scene of Miss Brett's death. In fact, the murdered victim was gripping it with her hand when she died. What are you? If you look at the barrel of the pen, you'll notice that its owner's initials are engraved there. R.M. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, counsel. The initials of the accused, Ray Membami. Is that a coincidence, I wonder? That your initials are also R.M. No! Write-in many memo, R.M. That's horse dung. Can't you see? One of the central tenets of many memoism is being a pencil user. Your hand doesn't seem to tell me otherwise. And yet, as the court will clearly be able to see, on your right hand, there is a very obvious blue stain. It would appear that you must have rather carelessly left it somewhere recently. Your favorite fountain pen, that is. Horsey horse dung! Mini Memo-san, is it not the case that before she died, you met with Giselle Brett in that beach hut?
Objection!
Why should we listen to this absurd nonsense? It's nothing but another excuse.
Exactly. Shoyu News will stand behind me all the way. I deny everything. There must be as many people with the initials RM as there are some stars in the night sky. The defense has neither the time nor the inclination to count every star in the sky. And there's no need anyway, because this pen has more to tell. Yes, there is another clue. A clue that undeniably proves who its owner really is. In that case, counsel, the defense will now show the court where this alleged clue lies. Of course, Your Excellency. The clue on this fountain pen that clearly reveals its owner's identity is...
Got it!
As well as the initials, there is also an emblem on the fountain pen. An emblem that you will of course recognize, Mini Memo-san. Goodness me, it's the emblem of the Shoyu News! In other words, the owner of this pen is an employee of the Shoyu News, whose initials are RM. Suddenly, the stars in the night sky don't seem so numerous, do they? Well, Mini Memo-san, how do you respond? No! Order, order! Explain yourself, witness. Ha 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 ha. So, this is how the mighty Supreme Court works, is it? Using coercive tactics to well-meaning citizens reveal harmless secrets. I've used nothing but honest tactics. Alright then, fine. I won't try to hide it anymore. Yes, not long before that grim tragedy unfolded, I, a Shoya news reporter, on behalf of the public, conducted an interview with the Englishwoman. An interview?
You never mentioned this before.
When exactly was this? As I said, it was before that evil little student. Girl showed her face in the hut. It couldn't have been lasted more than 2 or 3 minutes, that's all. It was just a brief exchange. But it came to nothing. And as we many memoists say, the people don't pay their dues for unworthy news. However insignificant you deem it to be, this court cannot overlook the meeting between yourself and the victim. You will testify now under oath about the precise nature of this meeting and what transpired. Got it. Yes, alright, but on one condition.
Condition?
In all good conscience, I couldn't speak out alone about this. You need to call back the earlier witness, Soseki Natsume-san.
Soseki-san?
Oh yes, according to my notes here, that man has a secret of his own, and brace yourselves, because it's not a harmless one, it's big!
What?
Many memoism states that one man's secret is every other man's front page story. Very well, I will grant the witness's request in this instance. Officer, summon the earlier witness back to the stand.
Soseki-san, hiding something.
I asked the Englishwoman for an interview, but she declined, so I left the hut without making a fuss. Then, watching secretly from outside, I saw the woman being stabbed and the other witnesses come running. The detective realized that the victim still had a pulse, so he ran off to fetch help. That's when this writer man here asked the woman a very significant question. But he didn't say anything about that in his testimony, which is why many memoism demands I reveal it now. You mean to say the victim?
The victim regained consciousness?
And
when she did, you decided to ask her a question?
That's, true, yes. He did, and that's not all. The woman gave him a very definite answer. An answer that incriminates the accused.
This is preposterous. Why am I only hearing about this now? Why didn't you mention this before, you yokel hack?
It wasn't even a conversation! Yes, I did pose the withering English Rose a question, I don't deny it. But she could no longer speak, she was barely conscious even. Counsel for the defense, I expect a thorough cross-examination to be conducted here. This court must and will know the truth.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. The reporter is claiming that Miss Brett implicated Ray somehow. What on earth could have happened in that hut?
Come on, Soseki, you should at least tell us what the conversation was. Don't make us press it out of you. Okay, this is probably the tutorial on how to switch witnesses on the stand, isn't it?
Hold it!
You asked her for an interview, you say?
Well, of course I did. I want to ask her about the incident she was involved in at the end of last year.
About the case in which Dr. John H. Wilson lost his life.
That's not the way I phrased it. Many memoism calls for straight talking. Why did you murder Dr. Wilson, is how I put it to her.
Yes, that sort of talking is as straight as a ruler.
Ask every question as if you're asking for a menu in a restaurant, I say. It's the best way. A veteran at the paper taught me that.
And how did Miss Brett answer?
with one simple phrase.
Mystery is a
woman's charm. Whoa, that told me. So I waltzed right out of there.
Really, something about that doesn't quite seem to fit together.
Leave every room as if you're waltzing in a dance hall, I say. It's the best way. A veteran at the paper taught me that.
Hold it!
That was very persistent of you, considering that Miss Brett had just turned you away.
Persistence wins the prize! Many memoists will tell you that. I'm so sick of saying penny memo. Let them think you've left. Then just when they lower their guard, that's when you swoop in for the scoop.
And the fruits of your labor are all too apparent in this telling photograph. Though I'm sure the young yokel student would rather not be reminded of this damning evidence. Actually, it's all thanks to that photograph that we managed to identify this witness.
And now you've found me. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. I've got nothing to hide.
I'm sure. Please, do go ahead, witness. The court is eager to hear what you have to say.
Try to stop me. There's a story to tell here, and I'm going to tell it.
Hold it!
And Soseki-san remained behind in the hut.
That's right, yep. Our author friend here was a blabbering wreck, shaking all over from his head to his toes, mustache twitching, eyes bulging. What do you expect? You don't know the terrifying troubles that taunted me whilst traveling abroad. Back behind baleful bars, they'll be coming for me surely. That's all I could think. I felt as though I was gasping for air, drowning in a sea of cold sweat.
Poor Soseki-san. His experiences in London have scarred him deeply.
As the world seemed to close in around me, I quietly recited a prayer to Amida Buddha. Eternal emptiness, empty eternity! The end is coming for me, surely. No sutras are to resound in my courtroom, please. And now we come to the crucial part. That's when it happened.
Hold it!
What question? What exactly did he say?
Well now, you should hear that from the horse's mouth, I think. Don't you, Mr. Writer Man? Ah!
Out with it, you yokel hack! What did you say to her? What did you say to the dying Englishwoman?
Well, in truth, I've been catching crabs at the water's edge, and building castles in the sand, you see. Well, the seaside is a place to be at leisure, I suppose, even for a grown man. But then, all of a sudden, from that little beach hut, a young girl's panic-stricken cries for help pierced the air.
Ray.
I ran up the beach to see what was happening, to find the defendant leaning over the collapsed victim. As soon as Inspector Hosonaga saw Miss Brett on the ground, he sprinted off to get help. And then, just a moment later, I heard a faint moan, a moan from the dead Englishwoman. I nearly jumped out of my skin!
What did you ask her, Soseki-san?
I asked her, who did this to you? Don't protract this any longer. How did the woman respond? She didn't! She said nothing in response! But... When in the stand, you will answer the questions asked of you unambiguously. Now, without evasion or reticence, I demand you amend your testimony. I will! Okay, he didn't tell us how she responded, though. I asked her who did this to you, but she never replied.
Hold it!
So you tried to find out who the culprit was.
He who asks a question is a fool for a minute. He who does not remains a fool forever. And having been labeled a criminal twice during my time in Great Britain, I was quick to make up my mind. Better be a fool for a minute than remain a fool in prison forever!
However, you've indicated the victim failed to respond. Is that correct?
I know why. I know why the Englishwoman said nothing. She was ignoring me because of my stupid mustache, because I'm Japanese!
Oh dear. Soseki-san has really developed a dislike for the English, it seems.
Having read the report on his time in Great Britain, I can't say I'm surprised at his xenophobia. But the Englishwoman didn't ignore you at all, did she, Mr. Writer-Man? Well, yes, alright. She did respond in a manner of speaking, I suppose. She just lifted a trembling finger and pointed in the direction of the defendant.
Hold it!
Miss Brett pointed a finger at the defendant. So Seki-san, is that really true?
It's not easy to stand here and say this, but when we first encountered the beach hut, the Englishwoman was sprawled on the floor before us, with the English girl standing on the far side of her. And when I asked, "Who did this to you?" the Englishwoman summoned her last ounce of strength to point a trembling finger at the back of the hut, which was, it can't be denied, in the direction of the student girl who stand accused today.
No.
Ozaki-san, why on earth did you neglect to mention this in your original testimony? But fiddlesticks, I say! This is not a British court of law. You will respond in Japanese. Yes, of course. The Englishwoman did point her finger towards the back of the hut, but I was trembling, and she was trembling, and everything was a blur. And thinking about it, I feel as though perhaps she was pointing in a slightly different direction. Actually, no, not slightly, in a very different direction to where the student girl was standing. Somewhere at the back of the hut, where nobody was standing at all.
You mean your memory of events and the direction in which the victim was pointing are both unclear?
Yes, that's it. Unclear. I'm very, very unclear.
Objection!
Your Excellency, surely this proves the matter beyond all reasonable doubt. Yes, the woman may barely have been conscious, and yes, perhaps her finger wavered slightly. But there could be no doubt that this was an attempt by the victim to confirm the identity of her assailant. Why? Because as the court could see, there was no one other than the accused in the direction the victim was pointing. It is now abundantly clear that no one besides the accused could possibly have committed this crime.
I am inclined to agree. And in the absence of any credible argument to the contrary, I believe we can now conclude this trial.
No! No!
Haha. The headline's writing itself. Dashing lawyers hopes dashed. 92 points across the whole page. We'll do an extra edition.
This is a serious blow, Susato. Unless we're able to identify the true culprit and substantiate our claim of evidence, the judge will give his ruling, and trial will be over. But that's impossible, Father. We don't even know how the crime was committed yet. Impossible though the task may seem, we have no choice. We must think back over everything we've learned thus far. Somewhere in all those details, I'm confident we'll find the clue we need. Ray gave us her account of how events unfolded in the defendant's antechamber before the trial resumed. She told us what happened at the precise moment Miss Brett was killed. The Englishwoman was sitting at the back of the hut, listening to what I was saying, and then, a moment later, she suddenly got to her feet before collapsing on the floor in front of me, with a knife in her back. How could Miss Brett have been stabbed in the back in a beach hut that was empty but for herself and Ray? Somewhere, amid all the information we've gathered so far, there must be an answer to that question.
Oh, come on, it's so obvious. I'll take it then. The defense has nothing further to add.
So, the gallant yokel student's luck finally runs out. I can't say I'm surprised.
In that case, I am ready to deliver my final verdict on this matter.
This is a crucial turning point now. If I can't establish what really happened, it's over. Where was the real culprit hiding? How did he or she stab the victim?
Objection!
Your Excellency, I respectfully ask you to postpone your abdication for the time being.
To what end, counsel?
The defense would like to present the court with an alternative theory. An alternative theory that could explain who the victim was actually trying to implicate with her dying gesture.
Objection!
An alternative theory? Ha! None exists.
Objection!
there was someone else present at the scene who could have committed the crime.
What?
And the victim, Miss Brett, tried to reveal who it was to those around her at the time, by mustering all her remaining strength, and pointing a trembling finger in the killer's direction.
This is fiction, fantasy.
Very well. As you seem so sure of yourself, Counsel, I am prepared to hear your alternative theory. So, young Ryotar Naruhodo.
Yes, Your Excellency.
You will present your latest theory to the court by means of this plan. At the moment the victim was stabbed, where exactly are you proposing the culprit was concealed?
Take that!
Naruhodo-san would never give up, and I'm a Naruhodo now. The true culprit, who fatally stabbed Miss Brett, was concealed in this location here. Are you mad, Counsel? You're suggesting the culprit was outside the hut?
What?
Order, order, order! But student lawyer Naruhodo-san Esquire, that makes no sense at all! You've just pointed out the exact spot where I was hiding to get my scoop snap. But I didn't see any suspicious individuals loitering about, I can swear to that.
Obviously, if the culprit had been outside the hut, there's no way that he or she could have stabbed the victim who was inside the hut.
Actually, Prosecutor Ouchi, there is a way. Ah!
And, in point of fact, the defense can provide evidence strongly suggesting that it's precisely the way Miss Brett was killed. You're bluffing! You're bluffing! You yokel!
The defense's assertion is clearly too fantastical for the court to comprehend. You will need to give us more guidance, Counsel. What piece of evidence corroborates your theory that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut?
Take that!
Well, I presented it now, but I haven't the first idea why I chose this piece of evidence. Oh, was I not supposed to use the photo? Counsel, you're suggesting that this piece of evidence bears out your theory as to how the victim was stabbed.
It's something of a windfall, Your Excellency. I think the word you're looking for, Counsel, was downfall.
Hey, come on, you guys know what I'm trying to say. If your theory is correct and the knife was thrust into Miss Brett's back from outside the hut, there should be a visible trace somewhere.
A trace, yes, on the hut itself.
Oh, I know what I'm supposed to do.
Armed with the idea, I must look through the court record again. Your Excellency, the defense would like to present a different piece of evidence.
Go ahead. What piece of evidence corroborates your theory that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut?
Is it in this picture?
Yeah, you can see it in that picture.
Take that!
The original photographic print of the crime scene.
Yes, it's clearly visible in this print. The trace of the fatal thrust that was delivered from outside the beach hut.
Objection!
Do you take us for fools? There's no hint of any such thing. I'm not sure that everyone present would agree. Someone, at least, appears to have noticed what it is I'm referring to.
Counsel, once again, I must call on you to be explicit for the court. Where on this photograph is the trace of the stabbing, which you claim took place from the outside the hut? Come on, guys, really? That's to point out everything for you?
Look closely, just here.
In the screen at the back of the hut, you can see the effects of a blade having been forced through the reeds.
No, I can't. I can't see such a thing. It's true that the hut in question had 4 walls as you'd expect. However, at the parting, the reeds, the knife blade could easily penetrate them.
That is extraordinary.
Yes. The true culprit actually stabbed the victim from outside the beach hut.
Ugh!
And of everyone present at the scene, there's only one person who could have done it. Only one person who was directly outside the hut when Miss Brett was killed. Write in many memos-on. It could only have been you.
No!
Objection!
This preposterous idea leaves me almost speechless. Just look at the photograph again. The victim lies almost exactly in the center of the beach hut, does she not? Are we to assume, as part of this farcical scenario, that the assailant was a knife thrower?
Objection!
No, of course not. We're not! If you recall the testimony of the defendant,
about the events just before the victim's death.
Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me, as if she knew she was untouchable. A stool?
Have another look at the photograph. The slit in the read screen would align perfectly with the back of a person who was sitting on that stool. My word! So, in fact, the victim was killed while sitting on that stool by a stab wound to her back delivered through the read screen. Ah! Having been attacked, Miss Brett rose to her feet instinctively. But then, unable to speak, she collapsed on the floor in the middle of the hut, before the defendant, Minbami-san's appalled eyes. And that, Your Excellency, is the truth of what happened on the beach that day. By your silence, Memo-san, I take it you don't deny the charge.
This is absurd!
That will do. It would appear that we have a tacit admission of guilt from the witness. Accordingly, this court has successfully established the truth of this matter, which means that the defendant, Minbami-san, is innocent of the crime.
Oh, thank goodness!
I finally made him cave. I must say, I've never been more proud.
No, this can't be! The ouchie can't. What of my growth? My growth of hope? It wasn't all an apparition. I cannot accept this. I won't.
I see no reason for the continuance of this trial. I will therefore move to conclude proceedings by delivering my final... Ha! Ha ha! Well, this is all very convenient. This is how the highest court in our mighty empire delivers justice, is it? Suppressing well-meaning citizens' freedom to speak and branding them as criminals. But we've established that the victim was stabbed from outside the hut, through the reed screen walls. And no one but you was in place at the time to have his hand on the hilt of the blade. It's a perfectly logical deduction. So, your argument hinges on the location of whoever stabbed the Englishwoman, does it? Well, it seems a little irrelevant now.
Irrelevant?
Where she was stabbed, how she was stabbed. It doesn't matter. I mean, whether she was stabbed at all makes no difference if you think about it. After all, the trial's already shown the whole thing hinges on something else. What? What are you talking about? Brace yourself, little man. I'm talking about the fact that everything's changed. Because of the dirt you dug up.
What?
Enough obscurity. Explain yourself, witness. What's to explain? I'm talking about the poison, of course.
The poison?
Let's ask the professor for a comment on the situation, shall we? I understand that a deadly poison you were developing was stolen from your laboratory, correct? And it's been shown that this poison was administered to the victim, Miss Brett, is that right? That is correct. The unusual constriction of the victim's pupils are a sure sign this particular poison was used. I see. So presumably that means that the victim already had the poison in her body before she was stabbed. Given that her pupils were clearly constricted, it appears highly likely, yes. If she had been dead already, the poison could not have circulated in her blood.
How refreshing to hear the arguments of a metropolitan mind. Precisely, it matters not a jot who stabbed whom and whose back and with whose blade. Because, quite simply, the Englishwoman's life was taken not by the knife, but by the poison.
Objection!
But that can be explained by the poison being on the blade, as I already...
Objection!
Aha, forgotten already, have we, Yoko? During these very proceedings, the laboratory of the professor at your side assisted in proving the blade of the weapon used to attack the victim had no trace of poison on it whatsoever. Ugh.
So let me get this down. The facts, as skillfully established by the defense in this trial, turn out to be a headline-making red herring. Is that about right?
Well,
Order! But where does this leave us? How, in that case, did the poison enter the victim's body?
There's an undeniably obvious answer to that. The lady most likely imbibed it.
You mean she drank it? Have another look at the photograph here. As you can see,
A bottle of carbonated water and a glass had been knocked onto the sandy floor of the beach hut.
or that was Mukitokuba. The poison could have slipped into either.
So somebody made Miss Brett drink it.
Well, how do you know? Look at those dashing eyes. This will make for a great front page shot. Hey, why the bewitching stare? After all, I'm the last person you should be looking at. It would make no sense at all that I poisoned the woman, would I? Would it? I mean, that's been established already.
Hold it!
Established? What are you talking about?
Don't tell me you've forgotten. That's a little hard to believe, given that the person who established it was you.
Me? What on earth does he mean?
Oh, let me capture those wide eyes. This is prime press fodder, this is. It would seem that this trial is not destined to end yet after all. I hereby call upon the witness to give further testimony. That's great, that is. Let me get a shot of that magnificent beard, Your Excellency. You claim it to be impossible that you are the one responsible for administering the poison to the victim. You explain to the court in your testimony the basis upon which you make such a claim. I'm a juror and I'm a man. I've never tried to run or hide from anything in my life. Hey, come on, we're just completely ignoring the fact that this guy plunged a dagger into her back. We're just forgetting that. I mean, maybe she died from the dagger wound before the poison, right? We don't know that. We're just gonna ignore that for this guy? Come on, guys. Come on. But I'm not about to start now, because that's many memoism.
For a brief moment, I thought I'd illuminated the truth, but it slipped right back into obscurity again. Just where is this trial going to take us?
Complete innocence? Really? Is that the name of this testimony? Oh yes, I stabbed the Englishman, and it's that very fact that proves I'm innocent. Come on, no way, man. Come on, no one's gonna buy that. Because why would I bother to stab the woman if I'd already poisoned her? When I heard the student girl and that pompous English murderer arguing, it got my goat. If the courts weren't going to punish Brett for what she did, somebody else would have to see justice done.
So, you admitted then that everything happened as I described. You were the one who stabbed Miss Brett in the back through the reed screen.
You can't blame this miserable country of ours. Or you can blame this miserable country of ours. A country that bows to the pressure of foreign powers and lets murderers walk free. What kind of future can a country like that have? That's why I did it. I did what our pathetic leaders didn't have the guts to do. Slap bang in the middle of that charming lady's back, I plunged the blade of sweet justice right there. As someone who spends his life seeing that the truth is told, I feel really, really awful about giving false information in my testimony before. But as it turns out, there was somebody else who had it in it for the victim and got to her before me. That's right, you guessed it. That pretty little student girl. Now there's a woman after my own heart.
You're implicating Ray again.
She's the one who gave the poison to the Englishwoman and ended her pitiful existence. And suddenly, snap! This journal here is off the hook. The argument is sound, certainly. If the witness had administered the poison himself, he need only have waited for it to take effect. Subsequently stabbing the victim in the back would have been entirely nonsensical.
And therefore, this report had nothing to do with the poisoning. Yes, it's all quite logical.
That's right, it is. Logical and true. I'm glad you've seen the light. Justice at last!
It is unbelievable. And after I made so much progress in proving his guilt, is he gonna get away with it now? Think of Kazuma-sama and Naruhodo-san. I like how she slaps herself in the face, like Naruhodo does, but when she does it because her arms are shorter and she makes like a less of a motion with her arms, it comes out just a little bit differently. It's kind of cute. They never stopped looking for a way forward until the judge's final gavel.
Very well then, counsel. Proceed with what I assume to be your final cross-examination in this trial.
I mean, I'd have to admit this is not as frustrating as yesterday's trial, where we spent like, we knew who did it, and then we proceeded to spend another 3 hours trying to prove little tiny details. You know? Yes, Your Excellency.
I also like how Natsume's still there. They didn't give me the tutorial on switching witnesses for him, so...
Hold it!
So, you do admit you had murderous intentions towards Miss Brett then?
Ha! The woman's very existence offended my sense of justice.
Your sense of... he's claiming some sort of righteous indignation.
She was pure evil, a cold-blooded killer who committed murder right here in our empire's soil. But did our good-for-nothing government do anything? Not a chance, so I had to step in. Fly the flag of justice. Put things right for the people. Yes, it was my civic duty. That's what drove me to do it.
So in summary, murderous intentions then.
Whatever you want to call it, the point is this. That Englishwoman was a blight, so I had to do what was right for society.
And yet a real wrong was done by the student girl in the dock, a crime for which she must pay.
Obviously, because the poisoning was nothing to do with me at all.
Hold it!
Yeah, I think if you like last night's case, look forward to the rest of the cases in this game, because I definitely think they amped up their game for all the trials in this game. There's some really, really big and really interesting plot twists that are to come later on.
So you still maintain that you didn't give the poison to the victim?
Obviously, that'd be like putting a belt on your trousers when you were already wearing braces like these.
The accused administered the poison, following which the witness stabbed the victim. An unforgivable act, certainly, but not one of murder. The crime rests on the accused's shoulders. That is how the law works, you see, yokel. Who knows, you may even learn something here today.
2 consecutive attempts on her life in the space of minutes. Quite a day for the victim. Do something evil, and you've got it coming. That's how the law works, the law of reckoning.
That's not the kind of law this court upholds.
You will reiterate why you were compelled to stab the victim then, witness.
Hold it!
What exactly were they arguing about?
But what happened in that restaurant 9 months ago, that's what. The student girl was laying into the Englishwoman for killing her beloved mentor, Dr. Wilson. Yes, John H. Wilson, a professor of medicine, invited here from England from Professor Mikotoba, no less. Right, but the Englishwoman just jeered.
Her case was to be heard by the British Consular Court in Shanghai. However, there is little doubt that she would simply have been acquitted and sent back to her homeland a free woman.
It was eating that student girl up inside, you can see it. I really felt for her.
I can't. I can't stand here and listen to this tripe. Ray, young girl, you stand accused here. You can't just blurt out whenever you feel like it.
No, you can't. Sorry, but I'm in the middle of something very important testimony here. Just keep quiet and listen.
But this awful man is making all this up. Susato, please, you have to make them listen.
Return to the dock at once, Membani-san. We're in the middle of a cross-examination.
Hold it!
Your Excellency, please, I implore you.
That journalist is clearly not a trustworthy witness.
Exactly. He's a filthy, rotten, black-hearted, bigoted, dirty, great peeping Tom.
Whoa! Take it easy there.
Please, I really think the court should hear what the defendant has to say. Your Excellency, I see no need whatsoever to entertain the accused's remarks.
I will grant the request of the defense.
But Your Excellency...
This is likely to be the final cross-examination of these proceedings. As such, I believe it would be ill-advised to stifle the defendant's obvious concerns. So, whilst recognizing that this contravenes regular protocol, I hereby call upon the defendant to speak.
Oh, thanks, Judge. Oh. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. It was nothing to do with Dr. Wilson. We were discussing the stolen poison.
Hold it!
The stolen poison that killed the victim, you mean?
I suspected her of being the one to steal it. I mean, just think about how she killed Dr. Wilson.
That's true. Additionally, Miss Brett certainly had knowledge of the new poison. But surely that would be no easy task to steal a highly secret toxin being developed for the government.
Indeed, all visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched when they leave. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult.
That's true. I pestered Professor Mikotoba until he agreed to show me the poison when I visited his laboratory. But as I left, I was searched from top to tail. Miss Brett rather bluntly revealed the existence of the toxin we've been developing, you see. And since Soseki-san expressed such interest in it, I felt unable to refuse. Obviously, I gave nothing away other than the fact it was an extremely potent substance. I'm very ashamed of myself. It's just that I've had a singularly terrible experience with deadly poison. I wanted to look my old enemy in the eye. Surely you can understand that.
To find out if my suspicions were correct, I confronted Miss Brett about the poison. I told her that if there was to be an incident involving it somehow, it wouldn't just be the university. The military would be dragged into it. The whole government even. It would be a complete disaster.
How did Miss Brett respond to your concerns?
She just curled those beautiful lips of hers and said she didn't know the first thing about it. In English, actually.
Yes. Many Memo-san, one small question if you don't mind. Now I do mind, can't you see I'm busy?
Clearly you're outside the beach hut listening in whilst the defendant and Miss Brett were conversing. Presumably then, it was you who wrote this article about what you heard. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from the Yume Medical Research Laboratory. The story was published this morning's edition of Shoyu News. The details are too accurate for it to have been written by anyone else.
Sorry, don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, look at this. The entire article is almost what I said to Miss Brett, word for word.
Ah!
Well, many Memo-san.
As a jurdo, and as a citizen of a free country, I don't have to reveal my sources. That's a founding principle of many memoism.
Father's clearly right about this. That reporter did write that article. And he based it on what he overheard from outside the hut. So that's what it was all about. You're trying to cover up the fact that you were listening in. That's why you came up with that stinking story about me arguing with her.
Shut up! My stories never stink. Look, whatever you say, little girl, it doesn't alter the facts. Your Excellency, there's something I want to say, and I want it to go on record. Very well. You may amend your formal testimony. The point is, if you'd poison someone, there'd be no reason to go and stab the person as well.
Hold it!
Perhaps you doubted the efficacy of the poison and sought to make sure your victim would die.
And that's horse dung.
What?
That would be like pouring pepper on your Chinese ramen before you even tasted it. Completely reckless. Although, it might surprise you to learn that I'm a bit of an impetuous pepper pourer as it happens.
Once the victim had taken the poison, she would have only been minutes away from death. And yet, this man then proceeded to stab her in the back as well. There has to be a good reason for that.
If it was the reporter who gave the poison to Miss Brett, then clearly, he must have done it prior to Ray entering the hut.
Yes, that's undeniable.
But between him leaving the hut and the victim being stabbed, there was one very crucial change in the situation. Sorry, what changed? The reporter overheard the conversation between Ray and the Englishwoman. Ah, yes, that's it. That's when Mini Memo-san first found out the exact nature of the poison he'd used. That could be the key here. If the victim had unwittingly taken the poison already, the reporter would have no reason to stab her. On the face of it, that logic sounds entirely reasonable. There's no question that this man was responsible for Miss Brett's murder. If we could think of a plausible explanation as to why he might have stabbed her even after the poisoning, I feel sure that everything would drop into place. That's what we should be looking for. Yes, I agree. In order to do that, I must try to glean more information. So basically, the idea is, what changed he stabbed her is because he didn't want us to find out that she'd been poisoned. If she was poisoned and they did a test, they would trace it back to being that single poison. There's only one location it could have been. That's the problem here. So, is it the reagent that I want to present, or the poison article? I think it's the reagent, isn't it?
Objection!
No. Like, my idea is correct, I just... not sure if I need to present the right piece of evidence on it. Okay, I don't need this anymore. Is it the article? It must be the article.
Objection!
Yeah, okay. The reason why I picked the reagent was because the description of the reagent specifically says that the poison only comes from that laboratory, and that's the information I wanted. That's why I thought to pick the reagent first, but I guess they want the article. Well, I can think of one reason. What? Before I explain, I'd like you to confirm something for the court. Did you glean all the information for this newspaper article from what you overheard outside the hut? Of course he did! There can be no question of that. After all, when we were at the laboratory together, all we were told that it was a terrible toxin. And there's one more important fact to consider. According to a witness, Mbami-san's verbal attack against the victim began as soon as she entered the hut. In other words, it would have been impossible for her to have slipped the poison into Miss Brett's drink.
Objection!
Where are you going with this, counsel? Mini Memo-san has made it quite clear that he observed every single thing that happened in the beach hut. If the defendant had somehow found an opportunity, this man would have seen it. Ah! Which means that Miss Brett couldn't have imbibed the poison while the defendant was present. In fact, it must have been administered to her before Mbami-san entered the hut. Yes, very articulately put. When I walked into the hut, I immediately started to press Miss Brett about the poison. At which point, Mini Memo-san overheard some worrying information. Worrying information? What worrying information? The information which he subsequently included in his newspaper article. Namely, the poison was being developed in strict secrecy, and it couldn't be readily obtained. Absolutely. In fact, that's quite an understatement. The only possible place it could come from is my lab. And furthermore, anyone afflicted by the poison would exhibit telltale signs in death. The extreme constriction of the pupils. Yes, it's quite stark when you see it. There are other poisons that show similar symptoms, but not among new substances that are undetectable. In other words, it would be clear that the victim's life had been ended by the use of this particular poison, which would reduce the number of suspects to only a handful of people. Ugh! Everyone in my laboratory is aware of the unique properties of the toxin we've been developing. None of them would be foolish enough to attempt to use it for some nefarious deed. And Mbami-san being no exception. Therefore, we can conclude that whoever administered the unique poison to the victim was a layperson unaware of its telltale properties. In other words, someone like you. Write in many memo. Ah! It was you who stole the poison from the laboratory that day, and it was you who administered it to the unwitting victim. You quickly realized that was a terrible mistake, because the poison caused such unusual symptoms and was so traceable. As you listened in from the far side of the beach hut's thin walls, you learned of these facts. You'd already given the victim the poison at that point. It was too late. So you hatched a plan to disguise your mistake. A plan that involved stabbing the victim in the back through the read screen.
Objection!
But what good could that possibly do?
Isn't it obvious, Counsel? The plan was to kill Miss Brett before the poison could take effect. Once in the blood, the poison causes the onset of pupil constriction. But he had hoped to precipitate the victim's death before it happened, didn't he? Exactly. Because without any revealing signs of the new secret poison's use, no one would have suspected. This is extraordinary. Yes, the effects of the poison meant it would be too easily identified, so the killer had to mask its use, while he attempted to do so by plunging a knife into the middle of the victim's back. Order, order, order! The argument presented is sound. The court is satisfied that it warrants consideration. Does the prosecution have a counter-argument it wishes to put forward?
Well, there are a number of... yes, I counter completely.
Objection!
Prosecution's evasive response clearly shows that in much the same way as he nurtures the remnants of his top knot, he is clinging to lost hope. Lost hope?
Ah! You pathetic, useless fallen samurai!
Fallen? Who are you calling fallen? My burgeoning growth is on the rise.
I don't need a counter-argument.
What? What are you talking about?
This should be blatantly obvious. I stole the poison, you say. Gave it to the victim, you say. Stabbed her, you say. Lots of fine theories. But I don't need a counter-argument because you don't have an argument yourself. Where's your evidence? Okay, for the stabbing part, at least you admitted it, so you can't really say that. Yes, you make it all sound so plausible, don't you? Without evidence, it means nothing. Whereas I base my news on facts. Facts? What do you mean? Explain yourself. I mean, what the professor said earlier in this trial. It's all here in many memos, every word, every slip of the tongue, all noted. That's what the Shoyu News is famous for. It's the power of the printed word. But surely it would be no easy task to steal a highly secret toxin being developed for the government. Indeed, all visitors to the laboratory are thoroughly searched when they leave. Even if a thief managed to avoid being seen by myself or a colleague, getting the poison out would be very difficult. How's that then? Blown the story wide open? See? I write in many memo, a mere reporter from the Shoyu News. Couldn't possibly have stolen that poison from the professor's laboratory. Ah! But there can't be any question of it. He must have stolen the poison that day. He stole it and used it to kill. And if that's the case, and as you have identified, the poison itself is the definitive evidence we need. Because whoever stole it from the laboratory that day is the true culprit here. What's your point, you annoyingly handsome country bumpkin? My point is this. There is one way that you, Many Memo-san, could have stolen the poison that day. I've heard enough verbal conjecture now, thank you. What the court must be shown is evidence. What proof do you have that this witness stole the poison on the day in question?
Take that!
The proof, Your Excellency, is this fountain pen.
A fountain pen? How could that possibly be relevant?
These magical pens somehow seem to be able to have enough ink to write many thousands of kanji characters, or kanji characters. I believe they arrived in our country for the first time some 15 years ago. Ah, I swear by weasel hair, calligraphy brush, and nothing else. These newfangled pens are merely a fad.
Well, as a forward-thinking man of words, obviously, I love my fountain pen. Sakuma Supka of sumptuous ink, one's work of is awash with words in the blink of an eye.
That's right. Fountain pens have a small reservoir in the barrel, into which ink is sucked up through the nib of the pen in order to write with later. What does all this talking of sucking up ink have? Ah! And just as it's possible to suck ink up into the reservoir, it's also possible to eject it through the nib again, of course.
My word, can this really be?
Well, Mini Memo-san?
When
you saw the deadly poison before your eyes in the laboratory that day, you used your fountain pen, your very lifeblood, to steal some of it, didn't you? By siphoning the poison up through the nib and into the pen's reservoir.
Ah!
Objection!
More absurdity! That never happened! True, we've heard that there were procedures in place to prevent thefts like this from the laboratory. But would anyone have thought to look inside a fountain pen of all places?
No.
I'm a little ashamed to say. But for fear of offending our guests, such a detailed search would not have been conducted.
Well, this is quite startling, I must say.
I remind the court that this pen was found in the clutches of the victim when she died. In other words, it was dropped at the scene by Mini Memo-san. So the crucial question is, when exactly was the pen dropped?
Ah, are you suggesting?
The natural conclusion is that in your haste act whilst the victim was distracted for a moment, you dropped the pen after you emptied the poison from it into her glass.
Objection!
There could be any number of alternative explanations. For example, the witness could have been using his pen to write down details of his conversation with the victim. And when shocked by one of her outrageous answers, the pen fell from his quivering hand.
Objection!
No, that can't be. If it was, how do you explain why the pen was devoid of ink? What? As you can see for yourself if you examine the evidence, there would appear to be no ink present in the reservoir. What newspaper reporter goes to interview someone with nothing in his pen? No, the pen was dropped after the poison that filled its reservoir had been emptied into the victim's glass.
Witness, what do you have to say in your defense? Wahaha! So this is how our modern justice system works, is it? So what if the ink in my pen runs dry? So what if my pencil snaps? I can always claw my way back up into the game. I have plenty in reserve. Yeah! You claim I sucked the poison up into my pen? That's wild speculation, nothing more. If you thought you could bring down a fine, upstanding citizen with a trick like that, think again. It looks as though it's going to take one final decisive blow to finish this matter. As I see it, the situation is now very simple. It rests upon whether or not this witness did indeed steal the poison on the day in question. And therefore, it all depends on whether or not the defense can prove that he did it with evidence. Ha! No such evidence could possibly exist!
Objection!
Mini Memo-san, this is how our modern justice system works.
What?
In the courtroom, evidence is everything. Something you would do well to remember. Because we all well past the point of speculation at this stage, I assure you.
Very well then, I call upon the defense to present the aforementioned evidence.
This is it then. This will be the final piece in the puzzle. The defense can prove, by means of this item, that it was the witness's pen that was used to steal the poison.
Take that!
Counsel, what is that bottle?
This bottle contains a unique chemical reagent that can identify the poison in question. Ah! Yes, that poison is an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids developed by my colleagues and I. It would be impossible to detect traces of it by any other method. Or, from another perspective, simply with this chemical reagent, anybody at all could check for traces of the poison.
Reagent? What?
One drop of the contents of this bottle on the tip of your fountain pen, Mini Memo-san, is all it will take to solve this case beyond any reasonable doubt. No, you can't. I won't. Your crimes are bad enough, but at least know when to admit defeat. Your Excellency, the defense requests permission to carry out the test on the fountain pen at once. Yeah. This isn't my fault! The Empire drove into this, trying to hold its head high as a civilized nation by bowing its head to every foreign power's whim. I took up arms in the form of mighty pen. I fought tirelessly on the battlefield, named justice, righteousness, yes, minimalism. To Sato, with me. And there. Yeah! Did I do it right? That was a Susato takedown, wasn't it? Not quite. That was a Ryutaro takedown. Yeah, you show him, girls. Get him. That's like the first time I think a defendant, and an attorney for that matter, physically got their one-uppance on the defendant themselves. Oh yeah, swinging his camera around is probably quite expensive. The instant the first drop of the reagent touched the nib of the fountain pen, it was clear to everyone present. When I saw it in the lab, the poison, the devil got hold of me, and I decided to do it on a whim. I excused myself, and emptied all the ink down the sink in the bathroom, washing the reservoir out carefully. And then you waited for an opportunity to suck up some of the poison, didn't you? Into your fountain pen. Yes, that's right. Answer me one thing, Mini Memo-san. Why did you steal it? For what purpose? Isn't it obvious? To find out what it was made of and expose it in an article. I mean, it was a secret project after all. Too juicy for a journal like me to pass up. Then why did the Englishwoman end up dead? I went into that hut, intending to question her on her situation. That's all. As a reporter. Known killer, enjoying full freedom, evading justice by leaving the country. I told her what I thought about it. And she just laughed in my face. Oh, what's this? A Far Eastern caveman purporting to practice journalism. Really, you must learn the difference between reporting and listening at doorways, you ignorant plebeian. What did you call me? This country, with its pretensions to a justice system, to a free press, it's really very depressing. You see our superior ways in the West, yet you lack the mental capacity to emulate them. Get out of here, you oaf. Get out, and crawl back to the cave you came from. That's when I remembered about the deadly poison I happened to have in my pen at the time. What a terrible tale. In my head, I knew she should just get out of there as quickly as possible. I knew I should get out of there as quickly as possible, but I couldn't. I couldn't let her get away with what she'd done, when she clearly had no remorse at all. I suppose it was my journal's spirit, getting all fired up. I'd like to ask you something. Yes. You often talk about justice. But surely as a journalist, you could have used other means to deliver the justice you sought. There's no justice in the press. Sorry? After that trial 9 months ago, I kept digging and digging to find out what had happened to that courtroom. And finally, I discovered the truth. It was a cover-up. That's what it was. cover-up? What do you mean?
I would remind you of your position, witness. Be careful what you say. Oh, come on! Doesn't it strike you as strange? We're suddenly not allowed to convict a foreign national. Consular jurisdiction should never have come into it. Yet, that puffed-up Englishwoman was going to sail away into the sunset after a free woman. The only possible explanation is that behind the scenes, some deal had gone down between Britain and Japan. What sort of deal? I'd done my research, dug up all the dirt, it was all ready to be published. But you know what happened? The editor just tore the article up. He came under pressure from the government, you mean? If our government is going to let criminals walk free, they're going to crush the free press. Then what choice do I have to see that justice is done myself? Let's not forget, Meni Memo-san, that you committed murder yourself, and you tried to lay the blame at the defendant's door. I'm sorry, but you're no better than Giselle Brett. What? The truth is, you have no right to talk about justice at all. I suppose... It would appear that we have reached a conclusion in this trial at last. Counsel for the defense, Ryutaro Naruhodo. Oh. Ah, yes, ahem. Sorry, Your Excellency. Just musing in a manly way here. It's almost unbelievable that this is your first experience at the Supreme Court. It was an excellent performance. In truth, it very much reminded me of your cousin's exploits. Oh, Naruhodo, Ryunosuke, you mean? The way he handled the trial 9 months ago, and the way you handled this one, gives me hope that we are generally entering a new era of justice in this land. That's very flattering, Your Excellency. Hearing the defense you put forward today made me feel most keenly that the future of our justice system will be forged by you and your contemporaries. Thank you. So, Prosecutor Aochi, you have any final thoughts? Prosecutor Aochi?
I, Taketsuchi of the Aochi clan, have been bested by a callow youth not once now, but twice. If there was any shred of my former self left, it has withered and died here today. Gosh, your journey to cultural enlightenment sure took a while, didn't it? Silence! Rather than living on in shame, I will end it now. End it all now with this blade. For that is the true path to Aochiism. Aochiism? One hopes that's the only way in which he'll be modeling himself after the witness. Sprig of my top knot, the time is right for farewell. Hope is lost forever. Taketsuchi. Ah!
I like what makes the scene is that they're playing Kazuma's theme with the sad version of it as he cuts his hair off. I can't get over that. That's what really makes the scene. Frickin' Asogi's theme. The saddest theme in the game. Playing as Aochi cuts his hair. Now, in regard to the defendants, Rei Membami-san.
Yes, Your Excellency.
I have reached my final verdict. I hereby find you... not Guilty. Court is adjourned. It's over. My heart is still pounding in my chest though. It's all I can do, just to stay standing. Lawyers have such great responsibility, such a great burden to bear. Don't they, Naruhodo-san? Susato! Susato! Thank you. Thank you so much. You were so dashing in there. Rei and Father. Honestly, I'm so touched by everything you've... Oh no. I think I'm going to cry. It wasn't easy, but together we made it. I was on the verge of tears at the end too. The only reason I'm still here is because of you. Oh no, I can't take all the credit. I took courage to tell the truth. It took courage to tell the truth in there. You did wonderfully, Rei. So I'd have to say that the congratulations belong to you. Susato, don't be so standoffish. Sorry? We're friends, equals, and the trial's over, so no more of this formal super humility nonsense. It's time to celebrate with swagger, to throw caution to the wind. Caution to the... what? I'm the greatest defense lawyer, Ryutaro Naruhodo, and I'm taking you out to Milk Bar tomorrow. Or something. Right, I see. I'll, think about it, Rei. At any rate, we really knocked the wind out of that horrid man, and it felt so good. Yes, it was satisfying. It really was. Isn't there anyone else we could throw together? I hope you're not looking at me, Rei. Oh my goodness, no, of course not. Of course not. Ah, there it is at last. Rei's lovely smile. You fought for your friend to the very last. As your father, I'm extremely proud of you. Defense attorney Ryutaro Naruhodo. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your help. You know, like, during the first game, I was kind of suspicious of Professor Mikotoba because of the cryptic advice he gave to Ryunosuke, but he's a good guy. I can get behind that. Anyway, it's time to bid farewell to Ryutaro, I think. I shall miss him in a way, but it's back to Susato Mikotoba now. So, I'll never see him again then. What a terrible shame. What? What is happening? Ah, so Seki-san and Inspector Hosonaga, I do hope you've been keeping well. Is that really you? Yes, I had to change my appearance for, well, obvious reasons I hope, but it's me. Susato Mikotoba. I don't. So dashing, so divine. No. Doubly dashing, yes, and devilishly divine. Just look at you. I had no idea, Miss Susato-san Esquires, that you were locum student Naruhodo-san Esquire's cousin. Absolutely astonishingly ace attorney. Poor Soseki-san, so confused. I still remember the first time I ever met him. He was in a prison cell in London. What an extraordinary conundrum it was that the unwitting student from Japan found himself embroiled in. But after Naruhodo-san's skillful defense at the Old Bailey, Soseki-san was free to return to Japan. Now he seems to have earned himself great fame as an author. I'm stunned. That's a truly impressive disguise. Even I had no idea that I'm a chief inspector at the police bureau. Who came up with Mr. Turtle, no less? I'm not sure you should be admitting to that, Inspector. Amazing. You're a woman of many faces, I see. Just two, really. And this was a once-in-a-lifetime event, I hope. Oh, I'm not a patch on... I'm not a patch on you though, Inspector. Well, I'm a professional, of course. I do worry about Inspector Hosonaga sometimes. I really do. 9 months ago, when he appeared here at the Supreme Court to testify, he was undercover, disguised as the head waiter of a restaurant. And then on the steamship to Great Britain, of course, disguised as a sailor to keep us safe on the journey. Though that didn't help you, did it, Kazuma-sama? From my perspective, I have to admit I have mixed feelings about all this. I mean, now the truth has been lost forever. What do you mean? I'm talking about the murder that the Englishwoman committed at the end of last year. Ah yes, it was an English doctor she killed, as I understand it. Dr. John H. Wilson, yes. The man I invited to Japan personally. The mystery is, why did she kill him? Now that the culprit herself is dead, we'll probably never know the answer. On the voyage to Great Britain, we had a most unexpected encounter with Mr. Herlock Sholmes, the great detective, I mean. Yes, I remember Mr. Sholmes well, of course. Ah, my arch-nemesis, how lightly you utter his name. Well, according to the stories published about him in the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, the detective once had a partner who helped him solve crimes, a best friend. And that man was an exceptional doctor of medicine by the name of John H. Wilson. What? Dr. Wilson? I just can't believe that it's a coincidence. I think that the English doctor of medicine killed here in Japan 9 months ago must have been the friend and partner of Mr. Sholmes. And if that's really true, then the poor girl won't ever see her beloved father again. As you know, I traveled to Great Britain once myself to study. It was around the time you were born. Yes, grandmother told me about it. On returning to Japan, I took up my professorship at the Imperial Yume University. But I also serve another role, as an advisor to the government on diplomatic affairs. Yes, I was aware of that as well. In that case, I'm sure you understand. There are some confidential matters I cannot divulge to you. Could you just tell me one thing? Why did you summon me back to Japan? It's been 2 months now since I returned. When I left England, it was because an urgent telegram had arrived from Japan. It said that you'd collapsed with a high fever, and you're growing weaker by the day. What? When did that news come from? That's what I'd like to know, because after that long sea voyage, I found you in fine health, Father. Was there something in Great Britain that you perceived might inconvenience me in some way, or harm me? That's really the only explanation I can think of. Dear me, do you reserve your most cutting glares for your father, Susato? I'm sorry, my dear. I simply can't. Ah! Let me go! Many Memo-san. So, one throw wasn't enough for you. I've got one last thing to say before they take me away, Professor. Me? I know the truth. I know you had a hand in what went on. In that visiting student's fate. Visiting student? Giselle Brett, you mean? No, not her. The student of law, who left for Great Britain 8 months ago. What? Student of law? He must mean Kazuma-sama. What are you talking about? What does any of this have to do with Kazuma-sama? Nobody here in Japan knows anything about it. They don't know that the guy never made it to England, that he died on that steamship, and that he'll never... Ah! Well, I didn't expect to find him in here. What were you officers playing at? Terribly sorry, Your Excellency. Don't mess with this, Judge, oh my gosh. I was coming to tell you that the rickshaw has arrived, Yujin, and it's a good job I came by. Yes, thank you for dealing with him, and I'll be there shortly. Oh, Your Excellency, Ah, ha, ha, ha. The trial's over. I'm not your excellency anymore. Merely your father's friend, Seishiro Jigoku. May I say that since I saw you last, you seem to have taken a more dashing appearance. This is the first time we've actually had a judge, a presiding judge in Ace Attorney, have a name. Because usually they're just called the judge. There was a judge in Ace Attorney Investigations 2. However, that judge never acted as a judge during that game because that game was about investigating. There were no actual real courtroom scenes in that game. So this is our first official named Ace Attorney judge. Susato? Huh? Did you know all along from the start of the trial? Ah ha ha! A judge sees everything, Susato. I couldn't let you take the risk. If Seishiro here hadn't known and that he'd recognized you, so I had a word in his ear beforehand, as an old friend. So Seishiro, shall we? Yes. Having ruled on that case, we now have various diplomatic issues to address. Before you go, Father. I'm sorry, my dear. We shall have to return to our early conversation at a later date. Well done again, both of you. You did admirably.
Oh, thank you very much.
What did you think of my Seishiro sling, eh? It's been a while since I sent a man flying like that. Ah ha ha!
Whatever could Father be hiding from me? About Giselle Brett, and about Dr. Wilson. Now it seems, according to the reporter, about Kazuma-sama. I'm going to have to bring this up with Father sometime, when nobody else is around.
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba-san Esquires, could I have a word?
Oh, yes, of course, Soseki-san. What is it?
I think perhaps it could be fate that we're meeting again like this now. You see, there's something I need to tell you.
Oh?
I believe that it may be related to the reason why your father summoned you back from England.
This I have to hear. Please, Soseki-san, tell me at once.
I will! As you know, my time in England was terrible. Cursed, I have no doubt. Such awful things I was embroiled in. Thank goodness locum student Naruhodo-san Esquire stepped in. After he secured my freedom, I couldn't wait to get on a ship back here to my homeland. Having arrived in Japan, I submitted a report about my experiences to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The next thing I knew, I had a visitor. It was your father, Professor Mikotoba. He wanted to ask me all sorts of things about my report.
My father?
He seemed to be especially taken with a particular part of the report. Anyway, he left eventually, having thoroughly quizzed me. But it was the very next day that he sent the telegram to you, asking you to return to Japan.
What was it then? The particular part my father was interested in.
I don't really know exactly. But do you remember them? Those two terrible cases I was caught up in?
Of course, I could never forget.
Your father seemed to concern himself mainly with the second case.
The second one? You mean the one Mr. Sholmes forbade any of us to talk about in the public? Which is why the only case involving you that any of the member of the public is aware is the first. So in the last game, they're talking about case number 4, the first time we met Soseki. However, Soseki mentions here he was involved in 2 cases. He said that earlier in the trial as well.
Well, I don't care. I don't have to listen to what that dastardly detective says. Anyway, the point is, it seems that case somehow holds the key to all these curious unanswered questions. That horrific, hideous, heinous case. The case of the haunted lodgings.
That case somehow caused my father to summon me urgently back to Japan. I thought that whole business was over, but it seems I was wrong. Perhaps that was only the start. Perhaps the story is not yet told.
So, the mystery of that English woman's death is solved, thank goodness. And having stood in the Supreme Court now, I think I can comprehend a little better. How you must be feeling as you fight for people's freedom in a foreign land, Naruhodo-san. But actually, I'm writing to you today because of another matter. I met Soseki-san and we talked about that second case he was involved in. Father has said nothing to me, but I feel certain of it. That case holds the key to some great unsolved mystery. My notes on the case should still be in the office, tucked away at the back of the shelves on the left. Perhaps you might like to look over them again. Today, for the first time this year, it feels as though summer has arrived. The sky is a brilliant blue. It makes me long to see you again. Yours, Susato.
All right. So, in other words, there was indeed, yes, there was a case in the first game, Timeline, that happens between Case 4 and Case 5 that we did not get to see. And actually, it's been hinted at because in Case 5, when we cross-examined, or when we did our summation examination on Mr. Garadeb, he mentioned something about both of his lodgees and something happening to them. We only saw something happen to Soseki, and in this case, Soseki mentions he was wrapped up in 2 cases. So the next case of Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve is Episode 2, The Memoirs of the Clouded Kokoro. It's a flashback case that takes place between cases 4 and 5 of the previous game. And it's a pretty good one. There's a lot of things in it that are very interesting. So, hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for attending the stream. Tomorrow, we're going to tackle Episode 2 of the Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve. Find out what exactly happened during that little interval between case 4 and 5 of the previous game, and how it might have something to do with Giselle Brett and all this stuff going on in the background. Maybe even answer some of those questions we have about what's going on. Hope you guys will tune in tomorrow, 7 p.m. Pacific. We'll be starting the stream again. Thanks so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.